Good morning. Being 9 a.m., I'll call to order the McHenry County Board Committee of the Whole meeting of November 13th, 2025, and Mr. Gottemoller will lead us in the pledge today.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, could you please call the roll?
Pamela Altoff. Carolyn Campbell. John Collins. Joseph Gottemoller. Terry Greeno. Eric Hendricks. Carl Kaminsky. James Kearns. Dina Krieger. Matthew Kunkel. Brian Sager. Michael Shorten. Michael Scala. Larry Smith. Patrick Sullivan. Paul Thomas. Gloria Van Hoff. Tracy Von Bergen. Chairman Bueller.
Here. Having a quorum, will proceed. Good morning. I have several items to report before we begin reviewing the agenda for next Tuesday's voting meeting. Thank you to the 7 members of the Finance and Audit Committee and the 7 other county board members who participated in the committee's meeting 1 week ago today for their hard work and earnest discussions regarding coming to a consensus on the 2026 budget and levy that we'll be voting on in 5 days. It's a very difficult budget, and your diligence and expertise were very much welcome. On Tuesday, November 4th, I joined Director of Public Affairs Alicia Schuler, Assistant Director of Transportation Scott Hennings, and Administrative Intern Alex Wall at the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning State of the Region event. It was there that CMAP announced the launch of its Century Plan. The plan is a 2-year project to craft a shared overarching vision for the 7-county CMAP region that will guide policies for transportation, the economy, the environment, and more for decades to come. I look forward to being a partner in this process along with our fellow collar counties, all of which were also represented at the meeting. Last night was the McHenry County Economic Development Corporation's annual dinner, where I saw many of you who came out to honor our business community and celebrate the winners of the MCEDC's 2025 Business Recognition Awards. Thank you to the MCEDC for putting on such a great event, and thank you to the county board members and staff who attended to show our support for McHenry County's business community. And the day before that, I had the honor once again of speaking at the annual McHenry County Veterans Day ceremony, which was held here at the County Administration Building. It was well attended, patriotic, and gave us the opportunity, as always, to let veterans know about the McHenry County Veterans Assistance Commission and its mission to help them get the benefits they earned. Last Friday, November 7th, our Regional Office of Education gathered the superintendents from all school districts in the McHenry County Education Region to discuss the MC Aid Alliance at McHenry County College. The Alliance is an intergovernmental agreement between the ROE, our emergency management agency, and the school districts to share aid in the event of an emergency and to share grants awarded to the Alliance to pay for training and materials. School boards are expected to vote to ratify the agreement in the coming weeks, and Regional Superintendent Diana Hartman has been working tirelessly to create the Alliance and bring everyone together, and I'd like to thank her for her hard work and vision. And finally, as a reminder for those county board members who are interested in learning more about the many boards and commissions to which we appoint members, you're all invited to attend the upcoming meeting of the Hebron Drainage District, which convenes at 9 a.m. next Monday, November 17th in conference rooms A and B. And that's all I have today. Do any members have comments today? Ms. Altoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to ask for a little latitude from the board because this may take a bit. I'd like to begin by thanking the State's Attorney's Office and Adam Wallen for their time and efforts in assisting me put together this solar update. I'd like to also acknowledge all the individuals in the audience who are here today to express their concerns regarding specific solar zoning petitions, and to the villages of Johnsburg and Spring Grove, along with the Township of McHenry, for contacting board members regarding their concerns also with specific zoning petitions. I think I can speak for all of my board colleagues, noting our shared frustration with the inability to have any regulatory authority regarding these solar zoning petitions. 3 events have occurred recently, and as Law and Government Committee Chair and ISACO's Solar Task Force Chair, I would like to take this opportunity to provide you, the board, with this information prior to Tuesday night's business meeting. 1, yesterday, the McHenry County Zoning Board recommended denial of a solar development zoning petition. This is the first recommendation for denial the zoning board has made regarding a solar farm zoning petition. 2, during the Illinois State veto session, both chambers passed Senate Bill 25, commonly referred to as the Omnibus Energy Bill. The legislation has not yet been signed by the governor, and if signed, will not go into effect until July 1st, 2026. 2 provisions, well, there are many, but 2 specific legislative provisions I'd like to update you to and may have potentially important or relevancy for your consideration as board members. Provision 1, the bill language now specifically states, in the event of a legal challenge, the prevailing party shall, and I stress the word shall, be entitled to attorney fees and costs. Provision 2, municipalities now join counties in no longer having regulatory authority over solar zoning petitions. When this legislative change was noted by the Illinois Municipal League Executive Director, despite promises, no language changes were made in either the Senate or the House chambers. The 3rd event, 2 court decisions regarding solar farm denials by 2 other counties have been determined. One sides with the county, the other sided with the solar farm development. And as you can imagine, both cases are now under appeal. In Will County, 3 additional separate solar cases are pending decisions. And I am not an attorney, but after review, I can opine that these cases are about whether or not the state has the preemptive power to remove local control. In conclusion, I'm available after this meeting to any and all to further discuss this. I offer the state's attorneys, individuals, both Laura Scarry and Kyle Brewitt, who have been very helpful in moving through all of these moving pieces, and also Adam Wallen, who is our Director of Planning and Development, who is extraordinarily familiar, particularly with Senate Bill 25. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Althoff. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 things. First, I'd like to echo your comments on the MCEDC dinner. There was about 400 people there last night. It was great to see government and the community, particularly industry, working together to better McHenry County. It was a fantastic program. Thank Mr. Scala for all his work that he's done with that organization. I think it really shows what this community can do when we put our heads together. The second thing is I want to thank our treasurer, Donna Kurtz, our county clerk, Joe Terrio, and our assessor, Alex Benitez, for their taxpayer information sessions they've been doing. I've attended 2 of them right now. I've attended 2 so far, and they're absolutely fantastic. It's great education for the people in our community to understand their tax bills and how they work. I think they've walked away with a better idea on how their houses are assessed and what that actually means. Alex has made it very, very clear that he's not raising taxes. It's not up to him, which I always find very fun to listen to. But they were great meetings, and I think it's gone a long way. I know there's a few more left, so if you haven't a chance to attend one, I have found that educational for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further member comment, we'll move on to our next agenda item, a public hearing for the proposed 2025 property tax levy. So I'd like to call to order the public hearing for the McHenry County proposed 2025 property tax levy. This hearing has been properly noticed and scheduled in accordance with the Illinois Truth in Taxation Law as set forth in 35 ILCS 200/18-55 through 18 to 90. Notice of this hearing was duly published in the Northwest Herald on October 31st, 2025. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public comment on the county's proposed property tax levy for the fiscal year beginning December 1st, 2025. The truth in taxation process ensures that residents are informed about and have the opportunity to comment on any proposed increase in the county's property tax levy that exceeds 105% of the prior year's extension exclusive of debt service. The proposed property tax levy of $73,802,726, along with the corresponding fiscal year 2026 draft budget and draft appropriations ordinance, was put on public display at that October 21st, 2025 regular county board meeting. The tax levy increase has been proposed under 35 ILCS 200/18 through 185 and 18-195 to ensure the county's fiscal stability, maintain healthy fund balances, and match revenues to expenses that have increased due to inflation and unfunded mandates. No final action on the proposed levy will be taken during this hearing. The final levy will be considered for adoption at the November 18th, 2025 regular meeting of the County Board, which is next Tuesday. We will now open the floor for public comment. If you wish to provide testimony or comment, please, I will call you up to the podium for those who have signed in. State your name for the record and keep your comments focused on the proposed property tax levy. This portion of public comment is for the property tax levy only. We will have public comment for other items immediately following. So, Ms. Cisneros, you mentioned that you may be willing to speak today. If you wish to do so, please come up.
Unlike usual, I don't have a prepared statement, so mostly I have questions. I did watch the almost 4-hour Finance Committee meeting last week, and I just came away with a lot of questions, and I do apologize if there's been an opportunity for the public to come and ask questions at a session that I was not aware of. One of my questions, and I think they talked about an abatement that would be in place for this next coming year. What I'd like to know is what happens when that abatement isn't available moving forward. For example, what would be the cost to us? I know now what's being looked at is possibly $39 per average household. If that abatement weren't there, those extra dollars that are being, what would that actual cost be? Is it $100? I don't know. My second question came from, there's been a lot of question in my community that people think this is connected to the mental health tax that was taken off our tax bills, but then supported by the sales tax that we voted for in favor, and I did. So when I watched the hearing, or the meeting, the finance meeting, I believe it was the CFO that mentioned something about, well, you know, we don't get the tax dollars from the mental health. And in my mind, again, I'm not a figures person or a budget person, believe me, I wouldn't think that would be part of this equation. I mean, is the sales tax not meeting the expectations that somebody thought it would when we voted to replace it? And is now the county going to have to supplement that mental health tax? Another question. The last thing I feel that's really important to do, I do support always capturing new growth. I get it, after 2008, there probably wasn't a lot of new growth, and then with COVID, there wasn't a lot of new growth. It's there now. So I do think moving forward, we should always be capturing new growth. However, I also think we need to give the public some idea, just more 5 years in advance. What are we looking to do, especially now if we're behind the 8 ball? You know, estimate what is it going to be next year? What is it going to be the following year? For 5 years. It's just educating us goes such a long way. I can't tell you. So that's why I'm here today. Maybe at some point someone can give me some answers. I will email all of you my email address, and then you'll have it and a phone number. And I look forward to getting some answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stick around for Ms. Kurtz's presentation because there's a lot of those questions will be answered in the.
Yep.
Thank you. That appears to be the only public comment regarding this hearing. Ms. Weiss? Carrie Weiss is our CFO.
I just wanted to respond to a few of those questions. First off, the amount without the abatement, so the proposed levy that's currently on public display, the 73 million, the average cost for that is $59.81. And so the hearing had to be posted with the amount that we want outside of abatement. So we're going to talk in the presentation in a few minutes about how we can reduce that number to $32.99 for the average household. And then second, to address the mental health question, really the proposed levy does not include anything to do with mental health. We said that we would remove it from the levy, and we did. I think some of the questions that come up about it is taking some of the space from the mental health levy when it was taken off. And for the past several years, we've talked a lot about sustainability. When mental health came off, there was never any discussion about, all the other levies would remain frozen where they are. So really, we're looking to recapture some of the space that was left when mental health. Correct. We're not funding any elements of mental health. That is all moved to sales tax.
Thank you, Ms. Weiss. And thank you to everyone who provided input this morning. Your comments will be taken into consideration as we finalize the county's levy for 2025. Seeing no further public comment, I'll entertain a motion and a second to close the 2025 property tax levy public hearing. Ms. Altoff makes the motion. Mr. Scala seconds. All in favor say aye. Aye. And against? Motion carries. I hereby declare the Truth in Taxation public hearing on the proposed 2025 property tax levy closed. We will now proceed to the next agenda item on our agenda, which is public comment. First, we have Renee Weigert. Just a reminder that public comment is your opportunity to address the board. You'll have 3 minutes in which to do so, at which time the red light in front of me will come on. If you have not completed your comments at that time, I would ask you to summarize and complete your comments.
Peter, I had handed him an envelope of petitions. I can just include one more. We have 306 petitions in there. This is also something to gift out to the board. I don't know who I hand this to. Good morning. My name is Renee Weigert, and I live next to the proposed solar site. I would like to start off by asking, how far would you go to protect your health, your family, and your community? Because next Tuesday, you are going to be asked to make a choice that could impact all of that, and for decades to come. Our bodies are made of billions of cells. Every second, they work to repair, heal, and keep us alive. When cells stop working, disease shows up. Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, cancer. So what causes cells to fail? Toxins. The air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the invisible radiation that surrounds us, EMFs. Cultivate Power wants to place a solar field with 12,500 panels, including transformers and inverters, just 150 feet from residential homes. Some will say it's safe. EMFs are low, like a microwave or a cell phone. But here's the reality. This isn't one device. It's thousands of sources stacked together. That's what's called the stacking effect. It's real, it's measurable, and it's dangerous in residential areas. It's not a question if disease will happen, it's when. Here's what EMFs do inside your body. They cause your red blood cells to clump, reducing oxygen delivery to every vital organ. Without oxygen, cells suffocate, weaken, and mutate. Do you know what thrives in a low oxygen environment? Cancer. And this is not speculation. The evidence is clear. I've provided a list of studies for your review. Look at them, read them, understand them. Our community should not be the experiment. So I ask you, will you approve something you cannot prove is safe long-term? This isn't about solar panels. It's about contaminated water, EMFs, blinding glare, fire hazards, and wildlife habitats. Yes, there is a law, but you, the board, stand between the rules and real lives. Litigation is uncomfortable and costly, but preventable disease is far worse. You are responsible for protecting the people who live here. Step up, stand tall, and do the right thing. Vote no until long-term safety studies can be proved, because once the harm is done, it's over. It's too late.
Jim Rollins, followed by Jeff Williams.
Good morning. Hope everybody's doing good. I'm here to speak about water locusts and the proposed solar farm in Johnsburg. I'm using some of the information that came right from the review from the conservation, McHenry, and they're talking about the plot of land and the leachability of the property that is there. As we all know, in McHenry County, we see plenty of sand and gravel pits, which means water has the capability to leach down to the aquifer. The aquifer in that area is about 70 foot deep. I've pulled up the water well readings in that area as I was a water well driller for a while. And the three houses that line that, it's 60, 65, and 70 foot deep wells. The solar company is proposing putting steel pylons into the ground to support the solar panels. I'm not sure of the exact number of them, but if anybody is driven by a solar farm, you all know that there are several of these posts, these steel posts that are driven into the ground with no grout, no seal, or anything like that. The review here, you used a 1962 review of corrosion of the metal. I'm sure today's steel corrodes different than it did back in 1962. So they didn't speak any of the heavy metals that would leach from these poles into the ground. As corrosion happens, heavy metal leaches from these poles. This field slopes from the northwest corner to the southeast. In the southeast corner, it is rated as an A2 rating for leachability, which is one of the worst that there is. So any rain that comes in there, it could come down, what I call these pylons, would be candlesticks, bringing the water right into the ground, down 15, 20 foot. We haven't been told, because solar farm or whatever, water locust has to do another test once it's approved to determine how deep these pylons are going to go. So if these pylons go 20 foot into the ground, that's just 50-foot difference between the pylon and the water table. The southeast corner of the property drains into a creek, which drains into the watershed of the Fox River. The Fox River feeds Elgin 94% of their water. Look, I don't think it's going to cause a problem instantly, but 10, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, could this be a potential problem when none of us are here? And then our people that said, what did they sign us up for? It could be a whole different thing. All I'm saying is just make sure we do the studies. I know Governor Pritzker signed off some legislation that kind of rubber stamps these things really quick.
You could summarize your comments, please.
Yes. Governor Pritzker also signed off on a Clean Water Act, too, on August 18th. Thank you.
Jeff Williams, followed by Joan Brum.
Jeff Williams, 2307 Country Springs Drive, regarding water locust. I want to first reiterate that I wholeheartedly agree with my fellow community members in opposition to the proposed solar farm on all accounts. As time is short, I'll try not to be redundant. I would like to focus first on economics. The clear financial winners here are water locust, solar, and cultivate power receiving government grants, McHenry County receiving increased property taxes, and the property owner with a long-term lease. I find the estimated annual property tax amount insignificant to approve this project versus other productive use of the land. The paltry utility savings to we the people is also insignificant and insulting. Being a homeowner adjacent to the proposed project, my homeowner's insurance will skyrocket as a result of the fire risk, among other risks. Will I be getting a government subsidy for this? My property value will decline. Will I get a subsidy for the decline in market value or reduce property taxes? Of course not. We the people will not get a subsidy. I moved to McHenry County from the Loop 15 years ago for its rural beauty and silence. Residing next to a hideous-looking solar farm with the nuisance of humming, glare, and dangers of EMF emission, to name just a few, is not what I had planned. This solar project falls under the Green Initiative. Here's a brief description of the Green Initiative. Strategies and actions aimed at minimizing environmental harm and promoting ecological balance across various sectors. This project is really the antithesis of the Green Initiative. What about the environmental harm to the soil and the list of health dangers such as EMF emission? The conventional rhetoric is that there are no health dangers in order to proceed with this agenda. Remember in the early 1900s when doctors endorsed smoking with no health consequences? This is akin to solar farming, and my family will not be used as an experiment. What about the dislocation of wildlife? What about the increase in local temperatures due to the solar heat island effect? I would like the board to consider these questions among many others raised throughout the hearings. This decision should be more about preserving the community, about the people of the community, not meeting a checklist of state criteria or guidelines, about financial gain for a few, or about promoting United Nations Agenda 30. Thank you.
Joan Brum, followed by Tony Achatura. Thank you.
I'm hoping that you each received a copy of this so you can refer to it. But for others, you can look as she will show you where everything is. My name is Joan Brum. My research of solar farm causes concern regarding the health and well-being of the community of Johnsburg, especially children. As a pediatric nurse who worked for the McHenry County Health Department and school systems, child health is my focus. My concern is the risk of leaching and runoff into the Boone Creek watershed and the water flow system next to the land in question. The water flow area is about 1 block as the crow flies from the potential solar farm. There is a 25 gradient drop from the northwest to the southeast corner of the planned farm. From there to the Johnsburg Fishing Pond Park is a 50-foot drop, followed by another 50-foot drop past 2 more ponds. This is a 125-foot drop in a 2-block area before draining down 30 feet to the Fox River. Prenatal and child development is significantly impacted by heavy metal. A solar farm increases runoff of 12 heavy metals, especially lead, potentially cadmium, of which 40% of panels are still used. Research shows that grasses take several years to contain runoff. When solar panels break down after 15 years, plastic absorbs into the soil. Research indicates that solar farms placed on hilly gradient have significantly higher rates of heavy metal runoff than those on flat land. In a 2023 study by the National Institute of Health, they recommended solar farms not be placed near residential or groundwater systems. This solar farm would be next to homes with wells near Prairie Path Water System's well system and our watersheds, including the Johnsburg Fishing Pond Park, where many children fish and play. Heavy metal in our water system, along with the water company's lead issues, will impact many people. There is no defined solar farm removal plan in Illinois. 80% of solar farms file bankruptcy prior to disposal, with 90% of decommissioned farms in Illinois still standing. The leasing landlord is left with an abandoned solar farm, further leaching into the soil and water system. It is my request that our county use their rightful power and request a more extensive ecological and conservation assessment that includes the waterways in question and consult with the Army Corps of Engineers in determining waterway detriment before this permit is given. Carefully consider the ramifications of the approval of this solar farm, especially the safety of children, Johnsburg citizens, and the community at large. Thank you.
Tony Echitura, followed by Angela Wermanski.
Good morning. I'm Tony Echitura. I moved to Johnsburg in 1977, and I have raised my family here. My son, daughter-in-law, and 2 grandkids also reside in Johnsburg. The solar farm proposed is placed in such a manner that the southern side is part of a highly wooded land that runs down into watershed and pond systems. The solar farm in question appears to be part of the natural wildlife corridor, and that's my concern as well. Deer, fox, coyote, and other possible wildlife follow the forested area with the collection of ponds and lowland to the Fox River and back again. Sandhill cranes, geese, ducks live on and use the pond and watershed systems. Owls, hawks, and bald eagles also hunt and fish. It's also a flight stop for hundreds of Canadian geese, which we also saw today on our way here. It's becoming the same for the Sandhill cranes as they continue to populate the area. It is my request for the McHenry County to use due diligence as allowed by law to request completion of an Illinois natural resource fish and wildlife corridor assessment before any conditional permit is issued. I urge the board to review all impacts, lead the state for this, for the well-being of wildlife and county residents. We need to secure safe water resources for all now and in the future. Thank you.
Angela Wermanski, followed by Jack Weigert.
Chair and members of the board, good morning. My name is Angela Wermanski, 5102 Country Springs Drive in the Country Oaks subdivision, which is immediately adjacent to the site in the Water Locust Solar LLC, application 725-0077. Out where we live, water is everything we do. We cook it, we cook with it, we drink it, we water our vegetable gardens with it, we bathe our kids in it. We have to be able to trust what comes out of the faucet. Many neighbors on the Prairie Path Community Water System recently received notices about PFOA in a backup well, more than double the new 4 parts per trillion drinking water standard, and they get repeated notices about lead in their water. My home and many of the homes closest to the proposed site rely on private wells that are not tested regularly, even though we know we should. People sometimes don't. The UDO is very clear about what that means. Under UDO 16.20.040E10, I believe that the board may not approve a conditional use unless you can find that adequate measures will be taken to protect the groundwater recharge and groundwater quality. I think that that's a mandatory standard. If I'm wrong, that's my bad. The natural resources report that Mr. Rollins referenced is part of our record, and it states that this site has A2 and A5 geological limitations, high aquifer contamination potential, and highly leachable soils. In plain language, I see that the soil acts like a sponge. Whatever is spilled or sprayed here now or 40 years down the line has an easier path down into the water that people drink. Commercial solar also behaves differently than seasonal farming. We love being surrounded by farms, and we know that they sometimes use pesticides and herbicides. A solar facility typically relies on vegetation suppression, getting those weeds away from the panels, and herbicide treatments in the same areas year after year, not like crop rotation. Long-term concentrated spraying on highly leachable soils next to untested private wells is not the same as seasonal agricultural use. So my understanding that this proposal does not yet contain any site-specific hydrogeological studies of this high-risk and vulnerable site, no groundwater or herbicide management plans tailored, and no long-term groundwater monitoring plan for this facility or our nearby wells. Under UDO 16.20.050, every conditional use must also satisfy the site plan review standards, including compatibility with surrounding properties, minimization of environmental problems, protection of sensitive aquifer recharge areas, and consistency with the 2030, and I think it's the 2040 or 2050 future land use map.
You could summarize your comments, please.
This map is meant for retail and estate use, not a permanent utility scale energy facility. Please, I ask you to vote to deny this conditional use permit. Thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice at the worst time ever, so I'm sorry. Thank you.
Jack Wiegert, followed by John Romansky.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here this morning to represent all the working homeowners who overwhelmingly oppose the installation of this massive solar field next to Country Oaks subdivision in the village of Johnsburg. This 50-acre field consisting of 12,500 This large field is sitting right next to the property lines of many residential homes. Proposed setbacks of 150 feet is just not enough. We're asking this board not to approve this solar field at this location and issue a postponement to find alternative locations that are more appropriate and away from residential areas. We, as the homeowners, have submitted objections verbally and in writing to the previous zoning meeting on 10/15. At that meeting, it was doubtful that anyone listened to our objections or read any of the documents voicing our objections to this installation. The approval by the board was a rubber stamp. Everyone on the board objected. Absolutely no one on this board objected to the solar installation. And we ask, how can this be? Think about the proposed solar field and how it would affect our ecosystem. You're removing fertile farmland from food production. You're impacting wildlife. You're creating potential for soil erosion and changing natural drainage. Our wells for drinking water are in danger of being polluted. Consider the weather in our area. We experience high winds, microbursts, and hail. Homes have been struck by lightning, causing substantial damage. Lightning has hit the ground and traveled, causing gas line ruptures, and explosions, causing lots of infrastructure damage. This field, being on a relatively flat area, will be the tallest object around, making it a natural target for lightning. There is absolutely no benefit or value to the surrounding community if you approve this installation. Ask yourself, would you want to purchase a property that butts up to a large solar field, or would you run? The field will be a visual nightmare for the residents of Johnsburg and the surrounding area for the next 35 years. Think about the kids being born today that will drive by this field in the future and ask themselves, what were these people thinking?
You could summarize
If
your
the
comments,
board
please.
approves this field, yes. It is our opinion that this field should not be installed next to a residential area. Alternative solutions should be looked at and then voted upon. Thank you.
John Wermanski, followed by Steve Kreisky.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. My name is John Wermanski, and I live in Country Oaks Subdivision, 5102 Country Springs Drive, Johnsburg, directly next to the site of the proposed Locust Solar Facility, application Z25022 or 077. I want to speak briefly about what happens after you vote on this project, especially concerning battery storage. In the MBA minutes in your packet, the applicant came in with 9 staff conditions. It was not the applicant who raised the batteries, it was the ZBA that added. Number 10, battery storage shall be prohibited on site. This is on page 7 of the minutes, and on page 6, a member described battery storage as quite a danger, especially with people around. I want the care of it to be shown for the homes nearby my community, and this does not appear to be so. In the ZMBA transcripts, pages 2 and 3, staff then clarifies how this works in practice. And if future owner wanted batteries, they could simply need to come back and amend the CUP to remove that condition and add batteries to the site plan. In other case, it would be the same process. In other words, condition 10 does not permanently close the door. It hangs a do not enter sign on a door that can still be opened later and amend process. At the same time, the granting this CUP converts this roughly 54-acre farm into a commercial solar energy facility with no time limit. The site becomes a permanent 7-foot NEC security compound, not a temporary farm field. And the future land use map designated this site as retail and estate uses, not a long-term utility infrastructure. In 2025, standalone solar is often only at the first phase. Many states, including Illinois, are encouraging battery storage through the evolving targets and incentives, which increases the likelihood that the future owner will return to the request on batteries in this energy site. So even with condition 10, battery storage is not fully off the table once this site is reclassified as a permanent energy facility. Under the UDO 16-20-040E2 and 4, the board is required to find the conditional use is compatible with surrounding uses and not to be determined public health, safety, comfort, or general welfare. And under the 16-20-050, it must be consistent with the county's future land use map. Given the staff's own concerns about battery storage next to homes and the long-term implication of transforming this corner into a permanent energy facility, it is hard to see how those required findings can be made. For these reasons, I respectfully vote to deny this conditional use permit. Thank you.
Steve Kreisky, is it? Kreisky. Close enough. Followed by Emily Grant.
Hi, my name is Steve Kreisky. Address is 2308 Red Oak Lane. So my property is right next to the proposed site. I agree with all my neighbors, the concerns on this. And I also want to add that I think in 10 years, this technology will be obsolete and this county will have a lot of problems dealing with all the solar panels that are being put up now. I also want to question the plan that was submitted to the zoning board, the map. Is there any way we could look at that? Because on the, it has one pin, I have 2 pin numbers on my property. There was 1 pin number listed on there, and there's an easement on the side, and it looks like they're infringing on my property on the plan. So I'd like to get clarification on that. Is there any?
This is a public comment period. I mean, if you have questions, you could certainly email our planning and development department afterwards.
Okay.
So
Well, it's a major
your
concern.
opportunity to address the board.
Okay. Well, that's what I just didn't know if there's a map available that I could address the board with that concern.
Not at this time.
Okay. Good. Well, then I'll just echo all the concerns with my neighbors. So how do I review this again?
Or speak to our county administrator over there.
Which is?
Peter Austin, he's on the very
Okay.
end.
Thank you.
Emily Grant, is it? Followed by Jamie Decker.
Hi, my name is Emily Grant at 4608 Spring Grove Road in regards to the Water Locust Solar LLC. I support responsible clean energy, well-planned and beneficial to our community. We need to take one specific step to protect our county's future, to prohibit commercial battery storage and ensure it never becomes an industrial battery site. This land in question is prime agricultural land, responsibly currently leased, tilled and farmed, soybeans currently, year after year by our local farmers. It's also surrounded by residential homes, homestead farms, and families who depend on wells for drinking water. Across the country, battery storage facilities have experienced catastrophic fires, some burning for days, releasing toxic gases like hydrogen fluoride, cyanide, and forcing evacuations miles away. Those same fires have produced runoff so contaminated it killed vegetation and polluted groundwater. Rural fire departments, including ours, simply aren't equipped to manage that kind of hazard. Even without a fire, these systems degrade over time. The lithium, nickel, and cobalt they contain can leach into soil, and cleanup can cost millions. Once contamination happens, it's too late. Cultivate Power LLC and Water Locust Solar LLC's initial proposal that we see today, there technically is no battery storage on site. Meanwhile, they are prepping the site by having additional plantings, a higher fence with a thicker wire diameter, and a concrete equipment pad that has, quote, subject to change based on additional engineering. These are the only upgrades above the minimum qualifications necessary and what is needed for a stage 2 of installing a battery energy storage site called a BESS. After doing an analysis of their website at cultivate-power.com, it mentions solar and storage in tandem over 11 times, being a key focus of their sales pitch to landowners. How will Water Locust Solar LLC and Cultivate Power be held accountable if this isn't stopped today? The answer is they won't. There are too many unknown variables, and the citizens of McHenry County deserve better. The board has been looking for their reasons to fight, and this is your answer, and today is your day. Please vote no, deny this conditional use permit. You can also adapt a permanent zoning restriction. Make this to ensure that the solar commercial across McHenry County can never be used for commercial battery storage. It would be to protect our community, our environment, and our rural character for decades to come. By acting now, you can prevent future harm before it happens for McHenry County, the village of Johnsburg, and its people. Thank you for your time in protecting the health and safety of our community.
That concludes our public comment portion of the meeting. Next, we have reports and presentations.
Sorry, I was on the list for next. Jamie Decker.
Oh, I'm sorry. Come on up. Lost track here. I apologize.
Okay. Good morning. I'm here in protest of application Z250077, Water Locust Solar LLC. My name is Jamie Decker, and I'm a licensed real estate agent who has worked in this area for over 7 years. Many of my clients live in Johnsburg, including in the Country Oaks neighborhood directly adjacent to the proposed solar site. I also grew up about a mile from this location, currently reside in Ringwood, own multiple properties within Johnsburg, and my children will attend or currently do attend Johnsburg schools. I'm here today to respectfully express my opposition to the proposed solar farm development. While I recognize and appreciate the need for renewable energy, I believe this project is incompatible with the surrounding residential area and the long-term interests of our community. From a professional standpoint, there is clear evidence that large-scale industrial installations can have a negative impact on nearby residential property values. Prospective buyers often perceive solar farms as undesirable neighbors due to the visual concerns, perceived risks, and stigma associated with being next to an energy site. This perception alone can reduce buyer demand and, in turn, decrease property values, especially for those living closest to the site. And since there is no direct benefit to nearby homeowners, no reduction in utility costs, no property tax exemptions, no local amenities, there's simply no incentive for buyers to choose Johnsburg over neighboring communities that don't have to contend with this visual and environmental burden. Equally important is the effect on community character. Johnsburg has always been known for its small town charm, open spaces, and family-focused environment. Transforming a prominent section of land into an industrial solar facility would alter that image, creating a visual and emotional divide between long-term residents and the rural identity that defines our town. I respectfully urge the board to consider the lasting impact this project would have on property values, community perception, and overall quality of life in Johnsburg. Please protect the integrity and character of this community by denying this proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Ma'am, did you have a desire to speak?
Yes, I didn't get a chance to sign in. My name is Dorothy Martinez. My husband and I currently own the last lot on Country Springs Drive with plans to start building next spring. I've been looking into like McHenry County 2030 Beyond Comprehensive Plan, and there are many comments in there that kind of point out that this is not what, our county is about, taking away these agricultural spaces. They actually state that open space and agriculture are two things that are nearly impossible to restore once they're gone. We've lived in the community for 40 years. We dreamed of building a house looking across at the sunsets. We'd be looking right at the farm field. And now we're kind of on a pause of what we're going to do. And, we just feel that this shouldn't be happening. McHenry County, according to this plan, has 150 years in agriculture. It's part of the heritage of the McHenry County board, their comprehensive plan. So we strongly are against this entire plan, and also I have looked into King County having turned down 2 proposed solar sites in neighborhoods. And one of the board members quoted, because they're directly adjacent to residential areas. So we feel that this is not something that should be taking place right now. Thank you.
That concludes our public comment for today. Reports and presentations. If there's no objection, I would like to take things out of order here. We have our county treasurer going to be giving a presentation and has to be downtown at a certain time today. So if we could just try to expedite it, I apologize for any inconvenience for the other presenters. So we will bring up County Treasurer Donna Kurtz and Carrie Wise, our CFO, for maintaining McHenry County government fiscal stability and fiscal year 26 budget options.
Good morning. Carrie Wise. I will be brief with my part, and then I will turn it over to our treasurer, Donna Kurtz. A lot of this information we went over last Thursday at Finance and Audit, but there are a few updates that I want to talk about. So first, where are we now? There's a lot of numbers that you guys have been hearing, like what's on public display, what have we been talking about since. So the current number on public display is a 73.8. But we made the commitment, the board made the commitment to continue to look at ways of reducing that number. So where we are at today, based after some discussion at Finance and Audit, is a 73.8 minus just under 4.3 in abatement. So that would be a proposed property tax levy of 69.5. And that is on an appropriations budget of 288.7. Again, since I've really been talking since May, we talk a lot about property tax, as we should, but I don't want you guys to lose sight of, there's a lot of other sources of revenue in our budget. You can see by the graph, property tax is 24%, and we're always looking at ways we can use other sources of revenue to minimize the impact on property tax. We have made up just under $6 million in cuts to this particular budget. Ones we've been talking about for a while, the reduction of FTEs, non-personnel expense reductions, Some things we talked about last Thursday was more shift from other levies, new sales tax. We've had an ongoing audit of sales tax, and we found some businesses that were reporting their revenue to municipalities. So the company we're contracting with worked with IDOR to get that moved to the county. And then some video gaming machine fees. Also, one thing we talked about a lot last week was strategic use of the general fund reserve. So all of these are built into that $4.3 million abatement. Just addressing again where we were at in fiscal 24 versus 25. So that's when the mental health portion of the levy was removed. So if you recall, the mental health portion that was removed was $10,975,000. But if you see the reduction from 24 to 25, 73.8 to 65, that's $8.8 million less. So over the past several years, we've talked a lot about sustainability and strains on the general fund, anticipating the ARPA expenses that have to be moved back to the general fund in fiscal 27. So really in anticipation, we grabbed some of that, or we took some of that levy space last year, and I think we were very transparent about the needs of the other funds, general fund, VAC, FICA, and IMRF. So the next line down would be the levy amount 67.7 using the base of 65 and adding the CPI and new growth. The line under that, 67.7, would be if we took the 73.8, apply the abatement, the difference between where we would be using the base of 65 versus 73 is $1.87 million increase. So I want you to kind of remember in a few slides, we're going to come back to the roughly $2 million for increase. So this slide is really important. What I did was the two options, I think that we kind of narrowed down at finance. This is just the general fund. So remember, the levy affects multiple funds, but this is just focusing on the general fund. So the average increase to the annual increase for the average home using the CPI and new growth would be $20.06. So the 40.6 would be the general fund portion of the property tax plus the other revenues for our total revenue, and then our expenses. So that would be using a fund balance of about 2.1 million. That would leave our months of reserve at 5.6. But most important, as I said earlier, we've talked so much about sustainability. I think these numbers here at the bottom, the 4, 5, and 6, really we've talked about using 26 to reestablish our base so we are fiscally stable moving forward. So the amount, taking the look back minus the 4.3 in abatement, the portion to the general fund would be 42, same with the other revenue and expense. So again, the strategic use of fund balance would be $775,000. And again, 27, 28, and 29 is really, I think, the important takeaway from this slide is a minimal impact to the average homeowner that really sets the county up for a strong financial future going forward. Able to continue to react to unfunded mandates, new programs, or even just providing the current level of service. Any questions on this one? No. So again, this slide is just the general fund, but when we talk about the levy, remember we have to talk about all the different funds. So the general fund property tax is about 40% of its revenue. Some of these other funds rely solely on property tax. So the top line, the total extension request for the general fund would be the 46.2 minus the abatement. So that would be a $42 million levy for the general fund, and that is just under $2 million higher than we requested last year. So again, if you remember back from the previous slides, when we talk about just the natural growth of these funds, really the general fund is growing how we have been anticipating it to over the past several years. So the majority of the increase that we're talking about by using this second option would be going to FICA and IMRF. So we've been talking a lot about those two funds that, just to remind you, so FICA and IMRF, those pay the benefits for the general fund personnel, for the FICA and IMRF payroll liabilities. So those funds over the past several years have not been keeping pace with the expenses. And, you know, and again, we try to move the levy to the fund that needs it the most as we analyze it each year. And again, those are just not keeping up. So looking at FICA specifically. So what this chart shows, the green bars is the fund balance for this fund. So the blue line is the 6-month reserve. So kind of the goal for this fund, because this one relies solely on property tax. So it really needs to go 6 months from September to May so it can make its own payroll burden. You know, we've again talked a lot about the advance from the general fund. So what I did with the green bars is I removed the advance from the fund balance, just so we can kind of show that we're really just talking about the proposed requests of 5.6 for this one, is just to get it back to this year where it can begin to start making its own, covering its own expense. So the proposed 2026, this line here, this anticipates 5.6 for the levy, with really the goal of being up here to about 2.5. Does that make sense? Because I think there was some confusion about the advance, and we can forgive the advance. You know, if we want to continue with FICA to pay back the advance, this green line would just grow a little bit slower. But really, the goal is to get this fund healthy so it can pay its own payroll. Okay, this slide I've been showing you a lot. Okay, John.
Mr. Collins.
Sorry, I just want to make this clear, because I know this has been a point of confusion. None of the numbers we're talking about for 2026 include paying back the loan, the Social Security RMF. That is like off the table. That's not part of any conversation, part of any numbers. That's just going to sit out here over the side, correct?
Correct, because in 24, this, and actually currently, this fund actually has a negative fund balance because of that advance. So I just assumed that it's going to be forgiven. You know, again, we can have more conversation if the board chooses not to, but really it's just, we need a levy amount that's going to get this fund healthy, and same with IMRF.
Thank you.
So this slide here I think is really important because it demonstrates all of the work that has been done. You know, I say all the time, we don't look at how much revenue we can bring in and then decide how much we can spend. You know, we really, the department head, elected officials do a great job of how can we use technology to be more efficient, or, you know, a lot of, they always have really great ideas. And I think this graph shows that they're not going to tax to the max. I'm stealing your line. So remember, the yellow is what we did take. The top line is what we could have taken under PTEL, and the blue represents the difference that was not taxed. So on this particular chart, the blue totals about $65 million. So I think that's really important message, that this is something that's very important, and it's always something that we're looking at every single year. Okay, last, CPI. We talk a lot about inflation, the impact to the funds, you know, and how we're dealing with that. So on this slide here, after the right sizing of the levies, really where we landed is this 73.8 million. So if you take that number and only apply the inflation that was used under PTEL, these numbers grow by that inflation number. So this plus this inflation equals this plus this. And important to note that in 23 and 24, we were capped, PTEL capped inflation at 5%, but the actual inflation was much higher. So we're really experiencing that in our funds. And so trying to maintain that balance of expenses are really increasing, and if we're increasing by less than inflation, that's really making cuts. So if you carry that math all the way through, we would be at 85.4. So if you remove the mental health piece from that, we would be at about 74.4. So the request after the additional cuts is the 69.5. So again, just kind of showing that despite this period of very high inflation, the county is really doing a lot to kind of reduce the impact of that, specifically on the property tax. Any questions so far? Because okay.
Ms. Van Hoff, I got you.
Oh, you got me.
Had you. Hold on, let me do it.
Yeah. So going back to a previous slide, there was a conversation that there were some occasions that we could not make payroll. Now, was that because of FICA and IMRF shortages?
So Treasurer Kurtz is going to talk a little bit about that. That was a cash flow issue, and I would just like to kind of change the message a little about not being able to make payroll, because that was not the case. I think, Donna and I work a lot on, how to maximize the investment income. And so really we have the investment amount, and then we have kind of this working cash account. And again, Donna's going to go into it a little bit more. So the goal is to maximize that investment amount of money. So there was multiple reasons that we had to shift some money from that investment account to this working cash account to make payroll. So a couple of them were the timing of when we get tax dollars, the reduction in the general fund reserve, just overall it's been coming down, and then some of those advances, because we talk about how it affects the fund balance, but really, you can't have negative cash in the bank, so we have to move money from the general fund to FICA to pay those bills. So it was a combination of things, and I think Donna's going to go into that a little bit more. The consequences. So that's really a good segue. Thank you.
Let's see, can I do this? I don't know if I can.
Oh, you're going to be on the move.
I don't know, maybe. I'd like to say good morning to my fellow county team. We're all part of county government, and it's really a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. I also want to say hi to all the esteemed members of the public and our employees. I thought the theme about the future was very appropriate, and I commend you for coming out to talk about that. Guess what? I'm going to do the same thing. So first off, I'd like to talk to you about fiscal stability. And in the area of taxation, which is what we do, especially when we're legislative people like yourself, we got to look at both ends of the spectrum. Nobody knew it better than James Madison when it came to understanding how to make government work. At the same time, nobody was a bigger cheapskate in the executive office than Calvin Coolidge. And we have to respect both viewpoints, but we have to figure out when one is better than the other. And so our challenge as elected officials is, the three-legged stool. We can't ignore one leg at the expense of another. We have to figure out how to balance it. We have to govern. And our challenge is that we are a fiduciary. We are a fiduciary in different ways. You obviously make some critical decisions regarding how are we going to fund what we have. And of course, mine is to protect every dollar I possibly can in the
in the context of county government. And these are not foreign to many of us who are business people. This is the essence of being a business person. You know, you don't cut the price unless you understand how you're going to keep the plant moving along. Well, same thing here. So our property tax trends that I'm showing you here are actually right out of my ERP database, which, by the way, I share with the clerk and the assessor. And it has to do with what's the kind of revenues we have coming into our county. And I want to say the top highest bar is got one way of describing it, in my word, one word. It's not a four-letter word, but it could be. And that is regrettable. It's regrettable that we have over $1 billion in tax revenues this year, and it's only going up. And in fact, what we see is about a 17.5% increase from 2019 to today. But there's two tales to be told here. The other tale of the story is county government. While everybody else was going up, we were going down. Now, even if you were to look at mental health board and add that back in, you're still relatively flat. And that is something that each of you should feel proud of, because that is the legacy of this county board. It always has been, as far as I know, in my 8 years, et cetera. It's something to take a lot of pride in. And at the same time, we're only 6%. We're only 6% of that overall tax extension that occurs. So our ability to, quote, fight taxes is very limited. We all know people are angry about the thousands of dollars of increase that they are experiencing. But the amount of money we're talking about here is, you know, under $100. I mean, that's what we're quibbling about. And by the way, we should quibble, because that's how we make the best decisions. So in that context, I want to say, you know what, good job, guys. You've done the hard work. You have controlled costs. And any of us who have been to other taxing districts and watched them when they do their levy, you might be disappointed that they don't talk. They don't have major concerns about lowering taxes or keeping expenses flat or any of the other things that ultimately impact the budget. They don't do it. We have done it. And that has been to our great, I would say, reputation, and something we should take pride in. And in doing that, our calculations indicate about $1,100, $1,000 to $1,100 stayed in people's pocket. If you know anything about economics, $1 in the pocket is worth a whole lot more than $1 in the government's pocket, right? I believe that. I hope you do too. I have the wonderful graph on the side, because that is that bar chart is how we established the tax to the max is not something we do on this county board. Never seen it done. But it's also allowed us to keep money in people's pockets and to do the right thing when it comes to our fiduciary responsibility. But things are changing, my friends. Things are changing. And let me tell you, this change comes in the form of challenges. And the challenges are not something we can ignore. We have jail services that are no longer here. And in fact, we didn't have that $18 million over the last few years to help build up our general fund. It's not something to judge on, it's just the reality. Secondly, we've got unfunded mandates, and we're estimating it's about an extra $1 million a year for the Safety Act. We also have what I think many of us would call crushing inflation. We all know it every time we go and get a burger at McDonald's, or we go and buy a box of $7 cereal. We're like, holy camole. It's a tough world out there. Well, guess what it is with the county as well. And then finally, the saddest of all, no more ARPA. That's kind of like almost a song, no more ARPA. You know, no more ARPA. And ARPA has done two things that were good, one bad. Good helped our county to the tune of over $59 million. Bad, we got a little fat, dumb, and happy. It's like, wow, we had all that money. Well, it's gone. And that was a feeling of, hey, you know, we're in a great place. Yes, temporarily. So given that, I have a little timeline here, and the timeline shows how we see so many activities occurring on this end of the spectrum. And there are good things in green, and there's bad things, i.e. cost bad things that are unexpected that are also impacting us. So the good things have ended, and the bad things continue on. Isn't that just like life, huh? So given that we have this kind of timeline, what we see is a downward trajectory of our bank account. This is the actual monthly ending balance of the general fund, of which I'm responsible for. And I just, reviewed the numbers, and there's some very interesting things here that I think are worthy of pointing out. What we see is a cash flow that goes up high and then comes down low. And that is the nature of our business, the nature of getting cash in June, but spending up until June, and then getting another infusion of cash in that September timeframe. And then, no more property tax revenues. Well, those things really keep us going. That's a huge amount of our ability to fund so many things. So, that downward trajectory is indisputable. Why? This is not, accrual accounting, which my colleague does so well. This is cash accounting. This is money in the bank that we need to pay our bills. And I want to point out that little yellow star, which was the day, Board Member Van Hoff brought up, in which we had not anticipated the precipitous decline with expenses and inflation and all the things we just talked about creeping into our ability to pay our bills. Well, yeah, I sold, a few $1 million of investments and forego the income relative to that. Not something you want to do. It's kind of like, and this is going to be a theme as we move forward, it's kind of like having to sell your 401k before you're retired. Not a good thing. And yet that's what happened. Yes, Board Member Greeno.
Could you just tell us?
Could you speak into your mic, please?
Could you tell us the vertical axis, what the range is?
Yes. So it's in increments of 5 million. So right here at the very top, this this doggone, how's that thing work? So the top peak is just under $45 million. Yeah. And the bottom is just below $5 million. So it was at a point where we did not have enough money to hit our expenses for that particular pay period and for the one after. So relatively short, but relatively hair-raising when you're not used to that kind of thing. None of us were. My staff was just incredulous. We were stunned. Why? We didn't see it happening. It was just not anticipated. But the good news is we see it now. We see it now, and that's why we're here. So, I want to go to the levy options again. I want to just bring us back to that. That's what the conversation is, and just say we've got an option 1, we've got an option 2, and we see that the difference between the two is $12.94, and we see that option 2 is going to move us towards that longer term. I'm sorry, I can't predict the next century, but I can predict the next decade. And we're going to talk about that in 1 second.
Mr. Kearns has a question.
Oh, yes.
I was on that last slide, I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, sir.
And my question is with these 2 options that you came up with,
yes, sir,
those projected balances with growth or with look back, without look back,
yes,
whatever, that projected growth of those fund balances out into next year,
yes,
what would they be?
Yeah. May I give you that $20 right after the meeting? Sure. So we're going to actually get to that. Thank you, Board Member Kearns. Excellent question and very, very appropriate. Thank you. Okay. So going back to the options that we see here, so we've got really a relatively small amount of difference between these 2 options in terms of overall cost for an average home and an average taxpayer. We realize it can go up some, it can go down some, but this is primarily what we're talking about. And so the issue of fiscal sustainability and stability is the issue. Why? Well, first off, let's have a story about our neighbor, Kane County. Kane County's been in the news lately, if you've been reading the paper, not for good things. They have been criticized for their budget cuts. Why? Well, they didn't take any levies for about 11 years, other than new growth. They didn't take them because they were cost cutters. They were tax fighters. And right now, they are in a terrible place. It's embarrassing. I feel for them, and they're wonderful. It's a wonderful county. But they got taken up with using the wrong tool at the wrong time. Remember the coin? The coin says, hey, don't take more than you should. And the other side says, but make sure you take enough so you can pay the bills. Well, they kind of looked at the Calvin Coolidge approach, and they're paying for it now. And in fact, what we see is this is just the public safety part of it. That was like, oh my God, because we all know if you're already cutting on public safety, and by the way, I didn't have enough room to show all the cuts they were making to state's attorney and all of the horrible caseload issues that state's attorney is now facing. But this is the last area that you cut, right? And look where they're at. They don't even know if they have enough people to run the windows. And the final part, which is just like, oh my gosh, they have a very low 90-day cash reserve, in context of ours, which is, something around 5 months, which is healthy and appropriate. Well, they don't even know if they can keep that going. And that is another part of our consideration today, because they are saying they're going to dip below their reserves if revenue remains level. Wow, if nothing should ever be if when you're in that kind of a position. And so on that note, let's look at County Board Member Kearns. Thank you. Appreciate the intro on this projection. What I want to point out is that the orange line here is our expenses. And the expenses are what we're projecting over the next number of years up to September of 2029. So we're taking it out quite a few years. What we see here, the halfway point, is right here is the halfway point where we start to see a significant decline. What you don't want to see, and remember what I told you about the day the music died, and we had a problem with unexpected declines. Now, since then, we've bolstered that, but how have we done it? We've taken money out of investments and cash on hand. But going forward, what we see is a very significant decline in using option one. And we see it going well below our anticipated expenses for going into 2029. Now, given the overall trajectory, and you guys can connect the dots as well as me, you see that the end is not in sight, except for going downward. That is where we're headed. Yes, County Board Member Althoff.
So you've got the extension beyond 2026, correct? What did you use to estimate that we do for levies in 2027, 2028? And how does that affect those dips? And did anybody do an analysis that if we would delay a look back this year, but looked at it next year, how does that affect that?
Let me answer a great question.
Do I get $20 after the meeting too?
It's
a joke.
I didn't know your rate was as high as Jim's, but we can talk. So let me first just address the fundamental assumptions, and then I'll let Carrie address the additional very good questions you're asking. So our assumptions in doing this is that we are going to see our cash flows stay in the same cadence that we expect. And so there's some proportionality that's been assigned in developing the model. And in the same manner, you see some bump up of expenses and how that is addressed. Now, in terms of the overall levy recommendations going forward, I'm going to have our CFO take that question.
So to come up with the assumptions for this, if you go back to this slide here, really the challenge was, as Donna said, we're going to assume the cash flow is the same. Where is it? This one here. The monthly cash flows are consistent. So we applied that percentage based on the past 5-year history to the ending reserve. And so this number here is the use of the fund balance, these numbers down here. And so I also had to make an assumption because the fund balance includes the bank account with investments and the bank account that's the working cash for the graph that you've seen. So I assumed a similar level of investments all the way throughout just to keep it consistent. So the assumptions that I used is this would be the drawdown of the fund balance. So this is an annual number, so then I just applied that to the months, if that makes sense. So really we're using the same assumptions of cash flow and reserve, drawdown of the fund balance, and applied it to the banks. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, Mr. Shorten?
Just to clarify, the long-range projections, is it assuming a 2.9% CPI plus new growth on an ongoing basis, or is it assuming a smaller number or flat?
So again, we've talked a lot about fiscal 26 is the year where we reset. You know, I think the spend down, and you can even see it a little bit with FICA, you know, we had some fund balances that were probably stronger than they needed to be. So several years ago, you know, there was a focused effort on right-sizing the levies, which I think we have achieved, but now we need to find a point to level off. And so really with the number that's proposed, that is to level things off. but we still need to keep up with future growth. So if we reset the levy this year, the model is using, to come up with these numbers, taking 2.5 of CPI and new growth for all the out years going. You know, and of course we don't know what CPI is going to be, but that's the number we use for the assumption.
That's on the right-hand column. Or is that also for the?
For both. I
both.
applied the same to both, so it would be consistent.
2.5 plus new growth.
Correct.
Okay.
Really, the discussion is on what base.
Understood.
You know, that's what's the difference between the two.
Understood. Thank you.
Mr. Sager.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I want to just reiterate, Carrie, so that I believe we're all on the same page here. If you go back to that last slide that Donna had up there, what we're really saying then in that option one comparative, because that's what we're trying to look at right now, is the comparison between option one and option two, right?
Correct.
Okay. So if you stick with option one then, and the last slide that Donna had there, this particular point, that presumes then that we are looking across the board at those future years. That presumes that we're taking the new growth and whatever we estimate as CPI, and you use the figure 2.5. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Just for total understanding. Thank you.
Mr. Kearns?
Okay, maybe we can't answer this question. Right now, we have I believe we're the only county with a AAA bond rating. When we get to those levels out there in 28, 29, are we gonna lose our bond rating? Because we're operating at a bad level.
County Board Member Kearns, I now owe you $40.
Thank you so much. I'll collect.
Yeah. May I get to that in a second?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
So you're gonna have that too? Wow.
So,
$1 a minute, right, Jim?
So, and we will get to that in 1 second. This particular slide allows us to see, on the other hand, the healthy cash flow. I think we would all agree when we have revenues that cover our expenses and we're not dipping into our reserves, we have what we would call a healthy cash flow. And that is what you see before you based on our projections. And in that context, I'd like to show you what we see with option one, dipping well below that budget line, well below. And not just at that point, which is like March of 2029, but it starts in March of 2027. So we're going to constantly be looking at the bank account and the incoming expenses and saying, are we where we want to be? What are we going to have to sell with our investments? Now, let me actually say that's not true, because based on your vote, we are going to have an investment plan that matches the liquidity requirements that you establish. And I will tell you that if you don't choose option two, we'll have a lot more liquidity, because that is the nature, frankly, of reserves. I love making money for you. It is one of the most gratifying parts of the job. But if you say, nope, we're going to use that reserve, we're going to spend on our 401k, then I'm going to comply, and our investments will, of course, go along in that vein. So the other option where we see much more stability is here, where every one of our lowest balance levels is above that spending. And that's where you want to be. I mean, you want to be that if you're a family.
Ms. Greeno?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yes.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I mean, you can finish your thought.
Oh, thank you. I just want to say, this is just the fundamentals of what we want to do if we're a family, what we want to do if we're a business, and what we want to do if we are county government. we want to.
I think ideally, let's get through the presentation, and because some of these questions that are coming up are in future slides, so I mean, I'd certainly welcome more questions after the presentation is done. Pardon me?
My question is definitely not in a future slide.
Oh, good. Well,
Because
bring it on.
I'm trying to think out of the box. Yeah, I'm going to have to pay you now because of this one. But, you know, finance isn't partisan, it's math. And so we have a very well-educated base of constituents who actually will look at this and have questions. One of the questions would be, let's just say that the referendum had not passed and that the levy for mental health was still in here, and we did not have the look-back option. Where would we be right now? Nothing would have changed as far as the unfunded mandates and the pressures with inflation. So what would we be doing right now? Because I think that would be a question that my constituents has actually already raised.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I think you answer the question well by saying, you know, it's the same situation. Whether you've got the 10 million in there or you don't, you still have to cover your costs, and the revenues are just insufficient from all the analysis we've done to cover those costs.
Well,
and here, Ms. Weiss has something to add.
Because yeah, that's what
I think
we wouldn't have a look back to put into the levy base. What would we be doing?
So starting with last year, we took about half of the CPI that was allowed. So I think the discussion would have been different last year as far as raising that base higher than the 73.8 to kind of start closing that gap. And the discussions would have had to continue into this year with, it would be a smaller gap, but again, you know, other sources of revenue, other levies, you know, including how much could the mental health levy be or some of the other ones.
Just finish, you're on the same thought I am. It would have looked more like option one, but we would have started not from 65 million and applied CPI, we would have applied CPI to 73.8 or something even slightly higher.
Thank you. Great to have you professionals out here. Great question. So the options kind of speak for themselves in terms of the financial stability and health of the county. It's just there in black and white based on the assumptions that we have established. So this assumes everything just goes kind of the way it's going. Option one, well, we're going to be off and we're going to be going in a downward trend with our fund balance. Option two says, hey, we're going to stay ahead of our expenses. And that's great, but the what if? And I know you guys, you think of the what ifs, you think of risk management, you think of what could happen. And I'm here just to remind you of those what ifs. And that is, the county vulnerabilities. I mean, one, we don't know how long Lake County's going to be here, giving us $5 million a year for jail services. And frankly, they can bolt before their 2027 date is over. They can bolt at any time. Secondly, sales tax variability. Guess what that's based on? The strength of the economy. And if the McHenry County consumer loses their job, feels constrained with inflation, does not do the spending, the way that sales tax is set up in Illinois, we're particularly vulnerable. And that is a big part of the revenue streams that we have no control over. The next part is, hey, Fed is just not there with the money anymore, right? We know ARPA was the glory days, and those days are not going to happen anymore. State, less likely to assist, and increasingly less likely to assist. They don't have the money from the feds, and, if economy doesn't go well, that's another problem. you know, recession, high employment, now there's more need for services that we provide. Well, you better have some money on hand to help people. And then finally, you know, if we were to have a natural disaster, I mean, you know, something blows the roof off of the county, or we have municipalities that need our help because of horrible flooding, you know, we just don't know what it can be. But, you know, if you don't have money in the bank, you're kind of constrained with how you can help people. So finally, you know, let me wrap up with consequences, and I think one or two more slides real quick. Consequences. So we're going to see a steady erosion of the balance, and we're just not going to have the money if we don't go with option 2. We just won't. And I will be watching your vote, because I'll be talking to my bond broker, my bond investment manager immediately after that meeting. Next is a steady reduction in investment income, obviously, right? You take money off the table, you're not going to make as much. And you know what, that also ends up being less, because you can't have very long durations because you're using that money. So you don't do very well in that manner either. So I think those are very unfortunate kind of things that would happen. You know, if you can't meet your service requirements, and this is a problem that Kane County is having, guess what happens? People sue you, because there's some state law out there that says you better you are required to provide the service. Well, we can't afford it. And are we talking tomorrow? No. Are we talking 3 years from now? Well, we might be inching in that way, but definitely in that 8 to 10 year period, yeah. What you do today is going to affect in the next 8 to 10 years. It is going to happen. And that's part of the, you know, very weighty responsibility that I hear, you know, and I understand rests on your shoulders. And then finally, the heightened risk of the county in the face of unexpected major costs. So, you know, if we can't help people because we don't have the money, we can't help them. We won't have a lot of alternatives. Oh, except we could borrow. Oh, except that we won't have a AAA financial rating anymore. Why? Well, they don't look too favorably on people that pay their expenses with cash reserves. That's not going to keep you anywhere near AAA. And so thus, if you do have to borrow, which we never do in McHenry County, but hey, we haven't gone down this path yet, then we are going to pay much higher interest rates. So that it's kind of a stark situation. So again, we have our 2 options. We see that it's a you know, less than $13 difference between the 2 of them, and it is what is needed for us to maintain a very important level of fiscal stability for the near long term. So key highlights, and that is just, you know, option 2 is going to give us what we need to keep moving forward and maintain our financial stability. You know, it's kind of like the path, the tale of 2 tails. You take this path, then you're not taking that path. And getting back on the other path, really hard to bushwhack between the paths. You know, we're going to have difficulty in maintaining our services. How do we know that? Well, 1, we have projections, and 2, we have Kane County. Yes, we do. We know where they're going. Unfortunately, more to happen in that area for them, and very unfortunate. So we're looking at an average $33 increase for the homeowner, and again, Kane County is a stark reminder that reducing levies for them, and I'm going to say for us, at this point, the tool in our toolbox is not to reduce the levy, but rather to go with option 2. So thank you guys very much.
Any questions? Oh, here we go. Mr. Kunkel.
My issue is 1 and 2, I see that. I'm kind of a bring the pain kind of guy. Because people don't make changes out of their normal or their comfort mode without a little bit of pain. We're all guilty of it. We live at that ARPA level or wherever we are, that's where we live. My 1 and 2 would be, the only way I could look at 2 is if we made some sort of a resolution, stark resolution that said we will from now on have a committee, a liaison committee, something that is just looking at reducing county costs, where we can save money. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody's departments, but where we could save money. And we look at this diligently all the time. Not to say that we make mistakes, but nobody is gonna change without a little pain.
Yes.
Number 1, I vote for, I'm good for the number 1 option, because that lack of funding brings the pain to the county. And we as a county, we as a board, and we as county employees will have to be the one who deal with that and make that right. Now, if we choose number 2 and we say our taxpayers are gonna deal with the pain, even $12 or $13, if they're gonna deal with the pain, then we must be diligent about providing them confidence that we are turning over every rock where we can save their tax dollars. So you might say I am in Coolidge's court because I do believe that anything that we take and bank from them has to have effect. Because we're holding their money, in some instances that becomes robbery. I do like the option. I do like number 2, how the line flows. I do like how you put, but people also have to realize that number presupposes a 2.5 CPI increase and a 2.5 new growth every year. So there is still levy growth and there is still pain for the constituent. I'm trying to divide that pain out or make it more manageable. If we can do that, I can see number 2. If we can't, bring the pain here, we'll deal with it at home.
Okay, thank you very much, Board Member Kunkel. You and I share many things in common, and one of them is our appreciation and our tendency towards the Calvin Coolidge approach of governance. I absolutely feel that way, and I want to give you 2 quick examples of some notable cost cutting that has been occurring since, you know, I've been on the cusp of, or, you know, involvement with being a treasurer. And this is what happens when you bring on Calvin Coolidge kind of mentality in your elected officials, whether they're board members, treasurer, or in this case, the clerk. The clerk came in and said, we're cutting costs. I don't care what it's gonna take. This is unnecessary. He took 1/3 of the entire, you know, combined recorder and clerk staff, 1/3, and eliminated that staffing. I mean, it was certainly done in a humane way, and, you know, people would retire, positions not filled, but he eliminated that, and we have over 12, 13, 14 million that the county has derived in savings since he did that. And that's the kind of thing where cost cutting is something we don't do, we shouldn't do because the county board told us. We should be doing it because we know that is our fiduciary responsibility. The clerk did that. Very short story on my end. This year, somewhere about 10%, 6 to 10% under budget with our salaries and our payroll. Why is that? Because we employ something called promote from within. And we grow the very best people without having to endure the expenses, et cetera, that don't work. I'm not even gonna bore you with the technology that we're using and building towards cost cutting, but we're doing that too. I'm not the only one, Joe's not the only one, but I will tell you, that's what it takes, and we're doing it, and we're still not gonna be able to, I think, cut costs out of the equation to the point where we're gonna be fiscally stable.
and I see that, and I'm not asking for this to be an all about cuts, but I'm saying in order for someone like me, a Coolidge like me, to vote for an option 2, there have to be safeguards built in, steadfast, that we are diligently looking, and not looking September, October. We're looking month in, month out, what are we doing to reduce the overall burden to the taxpayer?
Right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Shorten?
I'm going to start with a question, and it was one that we covered in finance. The yellow option that we did the kind of survey through of the people that were there, are those included in the variation or the proposals that we have in front of us?
Yes, so at finance, the abatement was a little bit smaller, so we were able to grow that number by some of the yellow options. Specifically the squad car replacement using RTA funds and the shift from the matching and the bridge levies.
So those are included in what we saw today?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. And just to comment on the, whether we go with option 1 or option 2, without a question, the standard needs to continue to be, because I don't think it's not an issue that it doesn't exist, that we need to continue to find ways to drive costs out. I don't know that we need a liaison committee. We're the liaison committee. It's our job to manage expenses, and whether they're things that come to us directly or things that staff are doing otherwise, we need to recognize that. I was in a community meeting recently, and I had a taxpayer that stepped up and was insistent that we were wasting energy at a massive amount at the county because where they had worked previously, which was a local community college, they had sensors in the hallways that turned the lights on and off when people were walking through, and they had been here and all the lights were on all the time. I called up and I spoke to Mr. Burrows, and correct me if I misstate any of this. I said, we have sensors in the building, right, that manage lights, motion detectors. And he said, well, it's beyond that. It's motion detectors. We detect sunlight. So lights are managed. If you go out in the hallway, and I noticed for the first time ever when I walked in today, that like every third light ballast is off because there's sun coming in from the outside. We even have sensors throughout the building that connect the light and the motion detectors to the HVAC systems. So if there's a courtroom, for example, that's not being utilized, it's not heated or cooled relative to the level that if it was occupied. Those sensors are to the extent that if someone just passes through a room, it measures that and doesn't automatically kick on a blower unit to control those temperatures. So there are a lot of things that take place that maybe we know about, have gone through committee, that are driving those costs out. Are there always going to be opportunities to reduce cost? Yeah, of course. I mean, the only way that you eliminate the opportunity to reduce costs is by eliminate all the buildings and all the people that work here. And so I don't think we need a liaison committee. I don't think we need a Doge committee that's been suggested, because we're that group. We're not the federal government. We don't have a $1 trillion budget with, I don't know how many hundreds of thousand people that work for the federal government. It's controlled and it comes through us. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
The motion sensors in this room are an issue when I record my monthly video. We have to have somebody walking around in the back of the room so that the lights don't turn off while I'm sitting there for 3 minutes making my video. So I can assure you, even this room has motion sensors in it.
Sometimes the lights go off when I'm sitting at my desk. So I'm like really focused. So I'm
Got to wave an arm.
Yeah.
Dr. Sager.
Thank you, Chairman. Just out of respect personally for some of the other visitors that are here for various things, would it be appropriate as chair for us to kind of postpone our conversation right now, go to those items of business, and then under the new business when we could talk about the review?
I agree. Carrie's going to be with us. Our treasurer, as you see, she had to leave and she's headed downtown right now. So I would be shocked if the appropriations and levy were not pulled when I asked so in a few minutes, so.
Right.
But, yeah,
Thank you,
for
Chairman.
that. Okay. Next, we have a proclamation honoring VAC Superintendent Michael Iwanicki. Joining us today is Terrence Prince, Director of Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, and Mr. Kaminsky will read the proclamation in honor of Mr. Iwanicki.
Proclamation honoring VAC Superintendent Michael Iwanicki. Whereas, for the past 27 years, Michael Iwanicki of the Veterans Assistance Commission has served with unwavering dedication, integrity, and compassion in support of our nation's veterans. And whereas through visionary leadership, Michael Iwanicki has transformed the Veterans Assistance Commission into a vital and thriving institution, expanding its reach and impact across the community. And whereas under Michael Iwanicki's stewardship, the VAC has secured critical benefits, services, and resources for our veterans and their families, ensuring that those who serve our country receive the care, dignity, and support they have rightfully earned. And whereas Michael Iwanicki legacy is one of growth, empowerment, and enduring commitment to the well-being of those who wore the uniform of the United States Armed Forces. And now, therefore, be it proclaimed that we, gratitude do hereby recognize and honor Michael Iwanicki of the Veterans Assistance Commission for 27 years of service and extended our heartfelt appreciation for his profound contributions to the veterans community. Dated at Woodstock, Illinois, this 18th day of November, AD 2025.
Excellent, thank you so much. Okay, great.
They won't let me talk for 30 minutes. Right. Yeah. Mr. Prince has a few words to say, as well as Mr. Iwanicki.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. This is my second time in McHenry County in the last 7 days. I was honored to be the guest speaker at Crystal Lake at the United States Marine Corps Ball that was held Saturday night. Hoorah, Marine Corps. As a 31-year Navy veteran, it was really my privilege to drive up here to say thank you to Mike Iwanicki, who made sure I understood the pronunciation several years ago when I first met him. As a fellow Navy veteran, and someone who has brought incredible service to McHenry County and the veterans that live in that space. As many of you know, it's difficult to measure the amount of resources that come into the county, but Mike has definitely put McHenry County near the top of the list of all the Veterans Assistance Commissions around the state. And the best news is he was able to recruit the next superintendent, Nate Johnson. He's somewhere in the room here, an outstanding young service member who served in the U.S. Army, to be your next superintendent. So knowing the way that I know Mike, he definitely has a great SOP, and you can continue to see things operate as usual. Before I go, I'd like to present him with a small token of my appreciation. This is one of my personal challenge coins. For those of you who served in the military, you understand the significance of a challenge coin. It's just a small token of my appreciation for Mike's support of the efforts that we've made at IDVA, working together with County Veterans Assistance Commissions, something that wasn't really happening as well as we would hoped in the past. We certainly have opened up a bunch of new avenues. So Mike, on behalf of all of us at IDVA, congratulations.
Thank you very much, Chair. And if Nate, you want to come up next to me here. It's been a hell of a career. I really loved almost every minute of it. I would be giving out challenge coins, but I'm trying to save the county money. If I look good, it's because I have a phenomenal staff, and if they could stand, I'd really appreciate it. They work hard every day. They're dedicated. They get the job done. Not all of them could be here because some of them are training. They're doing advanced appeals training. And I look back, and my first relationship close with the IDVA was going back to around 2004, 2005, when a group was coming into the county, and we now call them pension poachers, but the IDVA and the VAC teamed up together to inform McHenry County veteran families and others of what was happening with these pension poachers and how we could help the veteran far better than those people could. And didn't care if they came to our office or the IDVA, we just wanted to get associated with an accredited service officer. And I'm also thankful very much to the county board and all their support over the years, and to the incredible talent right here. I've gone to every one of these departments at one point or another to help the VAC run better. So it was a team effort. And Nate, if you just want to say hi and let them get back to work, because you got work to do too.
Good afternoon. My name is Nate Johnson, 8-year United States Army veteran. I look forward to filling Mike's big shoes and working with everyone here. I appreciate the warm welcome, and I'll let you get back to work.
Okay, next we have the 2026 RTA Budget Presentation. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Blaisel. Welcome back.
Did I remember this correctly? Or not? I guess not. There we go. Does it recognize your fingerprint? I think that's what it is. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the staff and public, thank you so much for this opportunity. On behalf of the RTA board and the incredible staff that we have to present this budget presentation for the year 2026. I want to make sure that we all understand that we are on the cusp of a new era in terms of transit in the state of Illinois. Most of you are familiar with the fact that as so many other things, education certainly is a prime example, the state of Illinois has been underfunding a transit system in our area dramatically for far, far, far too long. Fact of the matter is, out of the 23 major transit systems in the United States, Illinois ranks 23rd in terms of the level of support from the state which has been provided for transit system. In spite of that, we have a fantastic transit system as evidenced by the schedules, as evidenced by the infrastructure, as evidenced by the committed individuals who are working on the staff and on the boards to make sure that transit is provided for our region. I think we'll all agree that there's no question about the fact that a transit system which is second to none is truly necessary for us to grow and to develop in this northeastern part of the state of Illinois and as a state within our larger federal government. It's important to acknowledge certain individuals, and Mike, our chair, has just stepped out, so I'm going to hold that thought for just a moment and go to something else I wanted to say, and that is the fact that instead of a reduction in services, instead of layoffs, instead of fare increases, the state of Illinois has just passed a new transit bill, which is anticipated to be signed by the governor, and it's going to be that change in our transit system and the way it is funded that we are going to be able to see continued improvements to services and upgrades to our rider experiences. Building on 3 years of ridership growth following the COVID pandemic, the new funding will allow CTA, Metra, and PACE to increase hiring, improve employee and rider experience, add more frequency, and create a pathway for additional improvements to public safety and reliability that riders have been asking for over the past several years. So we focus on reliability, we focus on increase in service, and we also focus upon public safety. With the new funding, it will be truly transformative for suburban communities whose residents and businesses rely on access to frequent, reliable, safe Metra and PACE services. Metra can accelerate its transaction to regional rail and move closer to its goal of delivering frequent service on regular intervals all day, every day, not just during the morning and the evening rush. My sincere hope is with the changes not only in governance but in funding that we will be able to see in my lifetime the rail yard northwest of the city of Woodstock, which will improve and increase the amount of rail service that we have to the region as a whole. And that will create jobs, it will create economic growth through increased accessibility and reliability. PACE can further expand its bus on shoulder and pulse networks for fast, frequent bus service on the busiest suburban corridors and expressways. People with disabilities can continue to rely on ADA paratransit service, flexible options like the rideshare and taxi access programs, and additional support and improvements for dial-a-ride programs. The reforms across the board will strengthen coordination across all three operators, all three service boards, to make it easier to transfer between different services and travel from suburb to suburb, not just into and out of downtown Chicago. Saying those things, I now want to just extend my sincere gratitude to Chairman Bueller and to others who have worked tirelessly over the past several months to ensure that we did have a new transit bill in the state of Illinois. So I want to thank the chairman. I certainly want to thank Scott Hennings. He did a remarkable job to make sure that he was on top of all of the needs and the changes. The chairman worked tirelessly with other Collier County board chairs to ensure that our voice was heard in Springfield. Another group that I want to uphold is McCog, and under the leadership of Rick Mack, who was, as you know, and is now with the Metro as a retiree from Metro Services, but is incredibly knowledgeable. Their work made an incredible difference in terms not only of a transit bill being passed, but ensuring that the Collier counties had a competitive opportunity to work when decisions were made about capital priorities and funding distribution formulas of state and federal funds. If we had not had their voice, the Collier counties as a whole would have been overshadowed dramatically by Cook County and the city of Chicago in terms of representation and the voting process and procedures. So I do want to thank them tremendously for their fine work in that regard. With that then, colleagues on the board, I will now introduce not a new person, but a friend of McHenry County, the CFO for RTA, Kevin Bueso. He is a friend, colleague from previous years, and he's doing a fantastic job at the RTA board. So we look forward to working with him as we continue. I'll turn it over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Director Sager. Good morning, Chairman Bueller and members of the board, and always a pleasure to come back to McHenry County. Always love seeing the familiar faces, new faces, and of course, former colleagues when I worked here at the county. Just going to echo a lot of what Director Bueller mentioned about the influence that the county has had on this bill that was passed by the Senate and the House, or by the General Assembly. It's been McHenry County's influence on all of these initiatives has always been very positive, starting with Scott Hennings, who participated in Transit is the Answer, a strategic plan for the RTA, which set the groundwork for a lot of what happened now. And of course, so as soon as I got to the RTA, Scott Hennings' name and McHenry County's name was already, again, a positive influence throughout this process. So today we're going to have a few written remarks or short ones. I'm going to try to, I know you've had a long meeting, so we're going to try to make them as short as possible. But the first thing is, as you all know, the Illinois General Assembly did approve a Senate Bill 2111. And what that has done is brought transformational funding for transit in the region. And that's to the amount of right now, we're estimating about $1.25 billion of new funding coming to transit in Chicago, which this is, again, operational funding. And along with that, there is some capital funding that, as Director Sager mentioned, hopefully will speed up some of the projects that we have in the queue, like the Woodstock rail yards. So with this new funding, there comes no service cuts, no layoffs, no fare increases. They were originally proposed for February 1st. Those are off the table now. And then, of course, continue to improve the services that CTA, Metra, and PACE have delivered. Along with this, ridership, we are seeing a positive trend in ridership. And so in September of this year, we averaged about 1.3 million rides throughout the system. And building on these several years of ridership growth, the new funding will allow CTA, Metra, and PACE to increase the hiring, improve employee and rider experience, increase the frequency as well, to create a pathway for additional improvements, including public safety and reliability. So public safety in the system has been a key item, and that was included in this bill as well. So Senate Bill 2111, this $1.25 billion is made up of two main items. One is the sales tax on motor fuel, and I know there's, from my former role as a CFO at the county, I know there's this sentiment about this shift. But there is 5 points of the 6.25% that's going to come to transit statewide. 85% of that is going to come to the regional or to the RTA region, and then the 15% is going to downstate transit, again, supporting transit operations throughout the state, not just the Chicago area. There's an RTA sales tax increase, and that's an estimated of $478 million to bring in annually. The RTA board is required to approve these within 60 days of June 1st, 2026, when the law becomes of an effect. The counties will continue to keep their 0.25% of the 1% that's collected at the counties, so that doesn't change. One thing that I want to highlight on this specific item is that it is $1.25 billion annualized, but for 2026, we're not expecting these to come in until the last quarter or quarter 3, quarter 4 of 2026, since it won't go into effect until July 1st or June 1st of 2026. So there's going to be a time between that implementation of these new taxes and the funding running out for Metra and CTA, where we are going to use some of the reserves as well as existing funding models that we have in place to avoid any kind of service cuts. Moving on to the new items. So what does that mean for 2028? These new sources are projected to contribute that 1.25 annually, and this is again operating funding in total for 2028 that will reach about $4 billion for transit system, which again is transformational for delivering the services that riders have been asking for the last several years. Okay. Another important change, and again it's been highlighted on the news about the recovery ratio, is that, sorry, my slide's not keeping on track here, but that's important is that it's gone from 50% to 25%. So this is very important because, again, it aligns more closely with what we're seeing, the realities of our ridership. With the hybrid schedules, our ridership has declined post-COVID. So this new recovery ratio does align more closely with that, as well as the fare revenue that we're forecasting over the next few years. So that is a significant change. It's being eliminated. It's being reduced to 25% for the next 3-4 years. The penalty goes away for 2026 if we don't meet that recovery ratio, but then it does come back in 2027. So again, that's important changes to the legislature.
Could you briefly explain what the fairback recovery ratio is?
That's a good question. So basically, the recovery ratio in the past, it used to be that 50% of it had to come from fares. So that's sort of the simplistic way to explain what the recovery ratio was. The law did in the past allow for a lot of credit, so meaning 50% of our operations was required by the state legislature to come from charges to the users. That was just not realistic, and there was a lot of credits that were included for us to be able to meet that recovery ratio. The state of Illinois was the only state within the United States that had that recovery ratio law, and after, again, having the conversations, meaning that your fare, so if right now you're paying $6.75 to pay to go to Chicago round trip on a day pass, that day pass could cost as much as $16 if we were to meet that recovery ratio. Now that recovery ratio has decreased to the 25%, again, 25% expected to come from fares. Once the budget for 2026 is approved, the RTA will support the service boards in order to enhance the services. So we're getting off of the protecting services mode to enhancing services with this new funding. What does that mean? We're going to support Metra, CTA, and PACE to accelerate operator hiring. So trying to prepare for these delivery of services, increased delivery of services. We're expanding the Access Pilot program, working on that as well. So Access Pilot has been a program that Cook County has funded and partnered with the RTA to provide reduced fare rides to low-income or people that are experiencing low income. And so more than 6,800 permit holders have been benefited from these, and they have taken over 220,000 rides over the last few years since we have implemented this system. The plan here is to expand that to CTA and PACE across the region, and that will be funded through this new funding model as well. And the last thing on this is we will begin for increased public safety throughout the transit system. That was included in the bill, and there is a very clear timeline when the new organization needs to implement. So that's included in this bill as well, and that's sort of the steps that we're taking to get to that point. As you all may know, there is a change in the structure. So it's moving on to building on the current RTA structure and authority and advances that we have made. The current RTA board members' terms expire September 1st of 2026. There is, again, the new board is created under the Northern Illinois Transit Authority, or NITA, and as well as the number of appointees to that board and the way that the members are appointed is also changing. So there's the NITA board adds 4 directors to the regional entities board, so bringing the total to 20. 5 members are appointed by the governor, again with the advice and consent of the Illinois Senate. 5 members are appointed by the mayor of the city of Chicago with the advice and consent of the city council. 5 members are appointed by the Cook County Board President, and that's with the advice and consent of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. 5 members, which doesn't change, 1 from each county, from each color county is appointed, and that's again with the advice and consent of the board. And then the NITA chair is then selected out of those 20 board members. finally, that's another significant change to this is that 17 of these 20 board members will serve on the service board, so they will have a role with CTA, Metro, and PACE. Those are some of the, again, significant changes that are coming to the NEDA board or the new organizational structure. So just again to highlight is that the bill becomes effective June 1st, assuming that the governor will sign it over the next or before the year end. After that, September 1st, the current RTA board's terms expire, and so the new NEDA board will need to be implemented by then as well. Some of the key, again, these are some of the key dates that we have in mind. We do have our county, the RTA Board of Directors will had a special meeting on November 6th. That was 6 days after the bill was approved to reallocate the funding to the service boards, these $1.25 billion to be added to the 2026 budget process. Post that, December 18th, the RTA Board of Directors will consider the regional budget. That's going to be about $4 billion budget for the region. Then again, early 2026, the RTA and the service boards will move on to enhancing services, planning to transition from the RTA structure to NEDA structure. During the summer of 2026, again, as a highlight or mentioning, the RTA Board of Directors will need to approve or take a vote by simple majority to increase the 0.25% sales tax on the RTA region. And then October 1st, 2026, there is a transition working group that will help us transition from RTA to NEDA. And that is a group that will be of 15 members, and it will include members from the service boards, the RTA, and labor as well. So that's more of an advisory group. I have talked a lot about the operating, but our capital plan is also growing. So we do have a 5-year capital program that totals $9.2 billion. And some of the projects that are highlighted here are included on this presentation. Again, we are hoping that as we complete and go through this transition, that some of the capital projects that are highlighted here in McHenry County will start also taking place. In terms of, again, next steps, I kind of briefly highlighted some of these just short term, what we are doing. The service boards or CTA, Metro, and PACE are coming to the RTA board on November 20th to present their budgets, and they have gone through that hearing process after they had to amend the process because of the action that the Illinois General Assembly took. Again, at this time, I didn't go through all the remarks that I had, but I wanted to keep the presentation short. But if there's any questions at this time, we'll take those. Always appreciative of the time that you give us and the opportunity to come out and present an update on the RTA.
Mr. Scala?
Hey, Kevin, can you go back to slide 9?
Let's see.
This
Yes.
one. So the fourth bullet point down, major decisions require supermajority.
Yes.
Has major decisions been defined as to what that means?
It hasn't, but that's going to be part of the transition of this transition process. But it is included in the bill, but short answer is no.
Likely, though, I mean, I think we have to be forthright and say likely major decisions rest with the budgeting, the implementation of the equation of division of funds, as well as primary capital project priorities. And so I think that those are kind of the lump sum, if you will, of the major decisions that were intended in this, I think. But it will be clarified.
Yeah, I think that definitely needs to be defined because, again, as we've talked about, not that we are less represented, but the representation has been diluted. And so, when you look at the structure of how this is set up, I think it can be advantageous to equalize that liquidation a little bit. But again, major decisions, what that means and how it's defined could play a part in whether that really continues that liquidation of our representation or not, so.
That's definitely a good point. And again, the general sort of umbrella on how this bill was approved does include, of course, a lot of the finances, but as well as the service delivery standards that we have to set, and then the capital planning that has to take place, and that has to be done at the regional level, unlike what's happening right now, more of individualized per service board. So. But that is going to be part of that working group that is going to, along with consultants that IDOT, part of this bill, IDOT is required to hire a consultant to work on this transition, and part of that will be defining what does that mean.
Right. And I'll just add that, the focus of the Collar County chairs has been just that exact item that you just brought up. Since this bill has passed, I've had conversations with our other Collar County chairs, and we agree that we're all in the same boat together, and we will stay together just as we did throughout the process of the bill that was passed. And going forward, we have other avenues than just votes that we can take advantage of should we need to. Mr. Shorten?
Just a clarification. You're talking about the recovery ratio. It's dropped from 50% to 25%?
Correct.
So let me restate that in a way that is probably the same thing you said, but the fairs are now only going to provide 25% of the funding versus prior it should have been 50%.
That is correct. So it's and the 25% is sort of temporary through 2029. After that, it does get to 20%. So my apologies that I didn't mention that, but yes, that is correct. So the fare revenue and other operating revenue through the transit system is required to meet 20% of the operational or expenses that we have in the system.
Okay, so funding outside of fares would be 80%?
Correct. And that's, again, the sales tax, the two items that I mentioned right now, some of the other ad revenues that come into the system as well.
Okay. And the bulk of the dollars in the fiscal cliff that this bill is intended to resolve, the debt or shortfall was coming from the CTA?
If most of it was, over 50% was coming from CTA, but again, that was spread as a regional fiscal cliff rather than per service board.
And the new bill, there's no new rate increases in the fares?
That is correct. The intent behind this bill is so that there's no fare increases over the next year. Post that, then the system will need to, we will need to adjust, because that's, that's something that we cannot continue on. Fares have not been increased since 2018. A lot of things have changed since then, inflation being one of them, and it's just not financially stable to continue to maintain those rates flat as they are right now. And everybody, all stakeholders understand that. But that is the case for the next year for sure.
And the CTA fares will be decided by the NITA?
Yes, so the fare setting policy is going to be part of NITA now, yes.
Okay, because I was just looking at you mentioned the fare increase in 2018, and that was for CTA rail service went up from 225 to 250. Prior to that, any increases go back to 2009. So we're sitting at 225 for a bus fare and 250 for a train fare, which ostensibly haven't changed since 2009, while inflation's gone up 30%.
Correct, and just to add to that, so again, prior to this bill being approved, the RTA had mandated a 10% fare increase throughout the system, and that was part of the budget process. The Illinois General Assembly did remove that ability to keep that 10% fare increase. So the service boards were prepared to do that. The other challenge, again, comparing CTA to PACE is that some fare increases, like you pointed out, being $225, being $250, compared to some of the fares here at PACE. That was one of the challenges that we were having as a board, as an organization, that there was no regional fare policy being set. Whereas now we do have that authority, so we're going to be able to do that and come up with a better sort of a strategy plan behind how we're going to set fare increases over the next 5 years, 10 years, so that we don't fall into this situation that we're in right now, where one service board increased their fares some years ago, the other one a different time frame, and then there's no standardization of it.
Right, and I understand that, but I mean, ultimately, and this is not a you problem.
Yep.
The ratio recovery rate being lowered from 50 to 20% kind of offsets the need for fare increases, or at least at the level that they should be. That's just my comment on that. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Seeing no further comments from the board, thank you. Okay, Mr. Sager or Kevin?
Thank you, Kevin. And I want to kind of state at this particular time that it's important to realize that all terms right now on the current RTA board, because it is changing to a NEDA board, all terms will expire as of August 31st of 2026. And so that is kind of the mandate according to state legislation. So I'm actually kind of surprising the colleagues on the RTA staff who are here, which I appreciate very much. But I've had a conversation with Chair Bueller, and there has been somewhat of a difficult time sometimes with the schedules, because board meetings here occur at the same time that board meetings do at the RTA board right now, and I don't expect that that's going to get any easier for me as an individual, especially now that the McHenry County representative will also be serving not only on the NEDA board, but on the Metro board as well. And as a result, I've indicated to the chair, it's most beneficial, I think, for us as a county to have another individual represent the county as a whole. And so the chair will be considering individuals to forward to you for your consideration, but with respect and deep appreciation to the chair, to colleagues, and the folks at RTA, I'm kind of announcing that I'll be retiring from that position as those terms change, and let somebody else come in and serve us well. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
And thank you for your many years of service on the RTA board, Brian. Okay, that concludes our reports and presentations. Moving on to new business. Do any members have items from next Tuesday's agenda they'd like to remove for discussion? Mr. Shorten.
10A and
10A, you said?
yeah, I believe. I'm sorry. Let me go back. 10A4, 10A7, and 10A8, which I believe are all solar.
Dr. Sager?
Yes, 18B1 and 18B2.
Ms. Greeno?
Well, this is difficult. The ones pertaining to transportation, which look like 17B, 6, 8, 9, 10.
Hold on. Okay, 17.
B6. Do I have that right? Yes. B8, B9, B10.
17B6 what? There's 10 items.
Sorry,
16
sorry.
items there, so
Oh, gosh.
17B6.
Okay. 6.6, 8, .8, .9, .10, .11, .12, .13, .14, .15, .16. Thank you.
Any others?
Not .6. Not 17, 6.6. Starting at 6.8.
Okay. Can we take the discussion for all these items at the same time, or is it one at a time? Okay. Same for you, Mr. Shorten. Can we take all three of these at the same time, or you got individual conversation on them?
You can take them all at the same time.
Okay, Mr. Shorten, 10A4, 7, and 8.
I think the presentations from the community today on solar farms reverberate to my previous positions on these things. And frankly, in my opinion, overstep from Springfield, I'll be voting against all of these.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, thank you. And with all of the solar farm petitions we have here, I'm a little bit, need some clarification, I guess, with the member Altoff's comments about the new bill that has passed or will pass. And I had voted for the solar projects in the past because I was always concerned about the county's liability regarding that and following state statute, et cetera. So I was wondering if the state's attorney's office could render some type of opinion on whether this could, and not right now, but before Tuesday's meeting, whether this could or should change my opinion or how I could possibly vote regarding these solar farms, and what liability we still have or may not have regarding that. Am I being clear enough on that?
Yes, you're looking for some clarification from the state's attorney's office on what the liability may be or not, depending on how a vote comes down. So I think that we can make that request to the state's attorney's office. I don't know how long it would take to turn that around. Kyle, you have something, or Laura, you have something to add at this moment?
We can render an opinion. If you can just, are you saying you would like to have that opinion before Tuesday night's meeting?
Yes, if possible, before Tuesday's vote. I just, that would be great, if possible.
I think we can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Consider it a request from the chairman.
I'm sorry?
Consider it a request from the chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Altoff?
I'm going to echo Member Smith. I've always voted yes because of an interpretation that the state law preempted our control. What I was trying to convey is that I think that there, if you feel strongly about that, there's enough gray and enough actions from other counties that might make you reconsider that position as we move forward. And that was exactly the information I was trying to convey. Won't tell anybody how to vote. You have to vote your conscience, obviously. But I just think that many actions over the past several months have changed kind of maybe that attitude. And again, the question is, does the state really have preemptive authority over local units of government to take away our ability to regulate? And so that's really the underlying question where it is here. And if I were here on Tuesday, I will tell you that I too would be a no vote on all of the solar facilities.
Ms. Greeno?
Yes, on that same subject, this is such a perfect example of central planning and where we have this socialist policy and taking now in these recent legislative session to increase taxes on our current utilities to then pay for these renewable energy services, which are questionable. and then they put the statutes in place where we have no locus of control. So I was wondering if perhaps while we're looking at this, if there might be even some other avenues, some things that were brought up today in discussion about conservation efforts, impact on resources, the wildlife, if they can stop a project for looking for different things, but what we can actually do to regain some of this locus of control. So, thank you.
Mr. Kaminsky?
This is more for Adam or for planning, if you can get back to me. I plan on pulling this, if I'm allowed to table it to January 15th, date certain, and that would be on 10A.7.
Okay, it's within any board member's right to pull an item and make that motion, so feel free. Ms. Campbell?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to, I think we've had a lot of comments about, having lost control with solar, so I think that's pretty well worn territory, and I have expressed my own frustration over that. I did want to make sure that we are looking at some of these projects individually, that they're not all created equal. And in fact, I think the ZBA board has been trying to do a good job, especially in their narrative, which is recorded at the end when they're voting. They explain why. And I think they do a good job in identifying when there's a project that they feel kind of fits well within our own UDO, in terms of where it's located, not getting any objections really from neighbors, their commitment to the community, their outreach to the community. And so some of them are there that are worth looking at. And I would encourage us to look more closely at the individual projects instead of making a blanket statement that they're all created equally bad. I think we should be, our ZBA, I think does a really thorough job, and they are very thoughtful. Now, we might think of something beyond what they've looked at, but by and large, we should at least be looking at what they say. Thank you.
Mr. Kearns?
Not going to get into what everybody else said. I partly the state's attorney, in their opinion on, to me, there's two of these, at least two of the three, maybe all three of them, that the LaSalle factors should be very big in this because of the areas that they're going into, sensitive areas. So I think we should have that authority to vote no on these. And I always have voted no, as you guys know. But I actually am going to give a reason why I'm voting no on these from now on. And just not to vote no, but these are items brought forward by the public comment this morning. And then there's a second one that stacked batteries and everything on that. When I've personally driven by that farm thousands of times and have seen 4 or 5 foot of water over the top of that farm. So they can raise those battery stacks, but at some point we're going to have a disaster on our hands. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further comments on these items, Ms. Greeno, 17B 6-8 through 16.
Yes, thank you. I know there was a lot of discussion at the Transportation Committee on these items, and I wanted to just get specific and clarify on items B 6.8, 6.9, 6.10. These are all related to matching grants. Is that correct? Can someone just from Transportation versus 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, it almost looks like let's hurry up and spend the money.
Mr. Kopalski.
The budget runs
So
out.
those previous first three, Ms. Greeno, and you're talking about it, those are additional funds we do get from other sources, and then we use the matching fund to match what those are.
So we would actually, we need that because we would have to pay back the grant if we didn't fund it.
Right.
Okay. Now, these other items,
So the other items, you
There's
said
a
11,
lot.
12, 13, 14. That was your next batch, correct?
yeah, it was 11, 12, 13, 14.
Right, so
15.
those are equipment that we have shown in our capital program. We discuss that when we do our budget presentation with the committee and everything. And that these are resolutions for fiscal year 26. Given the long lead times, 2 years plus for some of these, we have always historically brought these forward for the county board's consideration at this meeting, so that if it is approved by the county board, then we're able to push it on to purchasing, and they can issue a purchase order on December 1st. What that does is it allows us to get in the queue right away to hopefully get the most timely delivery, timely being subjective.
Okay, and I appreciate that because I'm definitely a value shopper.
Yeah.
Do all of these purchases need to be made? I mean, if you saw that clearly something could be delayed, would we be delaying them in order to be?
We look at that continuously every year
Okay.
when we update the program and see where our equipment is, see what the maintenance costs are. We look at that continuously.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Keep your light on, Ms. Greeno. We have 17B, 615, and 616. Did you wish to comment on those?
Oh, no.
Okay. Dr. Sager, 18B, 1 and 2.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think it's important for us to continue the conversation from kind of where we left off. I want to start by saying first, I am truly grateful to and have a huge amount of respect for Carrie and for Donna. I think that you have done a remarkable job of communicating to constituents and regions, but also to this board with regards to the options that we have focused on. So I'm very grateful. However, having said that, I just think that there are some fundamental questions of assumption and definition which really need to be addressed so that we as a board can return to our constituencies and to really help them in an educational perspective to understand what is on the table. Because I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding sometimes, and I credit Renee, I think it was Weigert, who was here earlier, and pointed out that there are some basic fundamental questions and perhaps misunderstandings. So I'm going to raise a few, and I would just like for your response on that, Carrie, if you don't mind, to clarify what is meant so that we can actually help to communicate to residents. So the first one basically is limited look back. Why is the term limited there, and what is it limited on for our constituency?
So that just means the look back amount minus any abatement. So really, it's what is our starting point? The 65 versus the 73.
Okay, so again, limited means that we're focusing upon the differential, basically, the differential between the extension, if you will, the look back, and the abatement, correct?
Yes, and then in theory, you could take, so what we're doing is establishing a new base. So whether
Right.
you take the 65 or the 73, you could technically take the 73.8 and add CPI and new growth to that number as well.
That was where we used the term limited.
Right.
We
But
built
we're-
up a 65 rather than.
Exactly. But we're not doing that, so hence the term limited.
Correct.
Just want to clarify that. Okay. Second thing is abatement. Everybody doesn't really understand abatements, one. And second, I'm going to honestly say they don't believe that it's going to happen. You know, the government takes the money, the government doesn't give back money. That's the common, conversation out there. So explain how the abatement actually occurs. I mean, people think, okay, if you're going to abate my tax and you're going to send me a check for that differential. Well, that's not at all what it means. So explain that so that on the record, people understand what abatement actually means and how it's implemented.
So based on the vote on Tuesday, whatever that levy is, if the board chooses to do an abatement, that would have to come between November and then when the clerk does the extension in early March. So the clerk would never even do the extension, so it wouldn't be that everyone pays and then you get money. It's not like a rebate. It would just be removed before the actual extension.
Right, so it's reflected in the bill.
Correct.
So I want everybody to make sure that they understand that that's the case. No checks coming in the mail. Okay. Thank you. The third thing that I think is worthy of definition, and we all talk about it, we understand it, but the tax cap. We're looking at, right now, a CPI of 2.9.
Correct.
2.9, right? We have an opportunity, according to law, to extend more than that. Explain that, please.
So again, it's circling back to what are you applying the 2.9% to? And so we can use the extension from last year, the 65 million, or we could use the extension from 2 years ago as our starting point. And if we choose to use the one from 2 years ago, we have to actually extend that. We can't take, the proposal is the 69.5. We have to take the 73.8 and then abate the rest.
So that is, with all due respect, that's fiscal officer language. We're taking 2.9 CPI. What are we eligible for?
2.9.
2.9 is the max.
2.9 is the max.
Correct.
Tax cap says you may take 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever is
Right,
less.
that's the point I'm trying to get out there.
Plus new growth and new.
Right?
Yeah.
So that we are limited by law in that regard. So
You saw on Carrie's, one of her awesome slides, there was a couple of years in the last 5 years where the actual rate of inflation was above 5%. And while we didn't even take 5%,
right,
we would have been capped at 5%.
Right. So I just think it's important for us to understand explicitly what that quote unquote tax cap is and what the meaning is in this particular extension of 2.9. All right, thank you. And the last one I have, I believe, no, there's two more. One more question is the EAV in the examples that we use when we come up with these differentials, basically $33, then $12, right? We're talking about an average EAV of $350,000 home, correct?
Market value.
Market value?
Yes.
Okay, excuse me.
325.
Right. 325?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to make sure that we all have the same figure. I apologize, I thought it was 350. So $325,000 value on that. And explicitly then the differential between the two is if we were to go with the look back as has been defined, the limited, I'm going to say specifically, limited look back as has been defined, then it is basically $33 per year. That's not a month. I mean, a lot of people think this is a monthly charge. No, this is a per year $33 charge with the new growth or with the CPI, right?
Member Sager, you said the differential, and
no, I didn't mean the differential.
The differential would be about $12.94.
Right.
Between
the two.
Two
Right.
options.
But I'm trying to focus.
It would be just a $33 increase based on what was paid
Right.
last year.
Right.
This year, this coming year.
Correct.
Right, exactly, 33. And now the differential
$12.94
between that and the CPI extension is $12.45? 95 cents, so $13 on an annual basis for a $325,000 home, correct?
Yes.
$13, correct?
Yes.
One more time.
$12.94.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The other thing that you indicated was included, and I want to make sure that I heard this correctly. What was included, was it all of those yellow things as discussed in the Finance Committee? Is that included and that's what gets us down to the 13? Or were there certain ones in that yellow list that were removed based upon the conversation at the Finance Committee?
There was several that were removed. I mean, there was no appetite to do a reduction in the cooperative extension. There was no appetite to do a reduction in the soil and water group. We had talked also about reducing the merit increase for non-union wages from 3 1/4 to 3. I expressed some consternation on that one, and that's certainly been fed this week as I've talked with department heads and staff has talked with HR and finance. We accomplished that same amount of savings, which was about $128,000. But with conversations with Chairman Bueller, we decided not to move ahead with that 3 1/4 down to 3, just because so much of our evaluation process is already underway, and department heads are having conversations with staff now about next year's increases.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
But that same amount of addition to the abatement has been added through fund balance.
Okay. And transportation options, the first two options that were listed there, are they included in these figures or they're not included in these figures?
They are included.
Okay, and finally, can you give us any information with regards to what was discussed on a hiring freeze?
So I looked to try to, the challenge I think for us is, first, how do we put a number on that?
Yep.
So in the first 6 months of this fiscal year, if you look just at general fund, and then I removed deputies, corrections officers, and attorneys, that number was about 900,000, 6-month salary of the positions that were filled. So I guess my challenge is, that's based on positions that were vacated. So are we gonna see the same thing in fiscal 26 as we saw in fiscal 25? And how do we build that into a budget? So if we put 800,000 as a reduction and we don't see that, that was kind of where we left off some of the conversation on. I think it's worthy of more discussion, but as far as building that into a budget, we try to stay away from unknowns, whether it's on revenue or expense, and that really seems like a big unknown. As far as, I think the pushback a little maybe from department heads and elected officials is they really work hard on making sure that their rosters are appropriate. And, if they can go 6 months without hiring a position, then maybe we should talk about if that position should even be on the roster.
Could I just add, I think that some of the challenges, certainly some of our smaller departments that have very small staffs, coroner's office, so what do they have, 7 employees? 6 employees, one leaves, and, that's almost 20% of your staff, to not replace them because there's a freeze on could create some issues over time, or the auditor's office, who only, what do they have, 5 people over there? Again, that would be 20% of your staff, and there's work that needs to be done, and that's quite a large reduction in staff with not considerable amount of savings or benefit to the budget at all, right?
Yeah. Again, as Kerry said, it's,
How do we measure that? Which departments does it apply to, or which employee or positions does it apply to, and how critical are those positions is the difficulty, I think, with some of that.
We did a very thorough scrubbing of vacant positions this fall, and that's kind of how we got to the 18 reduction in FTE that we did.
I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the explanation. I want to kind of state that I am not in favor, and I don't think that there was a strong majority position from the Finance Committee to eliminate or to utilize the transportation, the two top transportation options to balance this budget or to work here. So I'm concerned that that was automatically included. And so I want to go back and say I'm not in favor of that. And I think there are several others on the board that are not in favor of that as well. So I would like to get some focus or some indication of where we stand in that. The second thing is that I absolutely believe that a hiring freeze is a strong statement in terms of what we are trying to do and the actions that we are taking to try to control the budgets. I agree that you all have successfully cut a significant amount of money from the budget. I think it was reported this morning at $6 million, right? That's a huge effort, and I appreciate it. But I do believe that there are options for us to include a hiring freeze for 6 months. And I understand what you're saying, but in no instance when I was speaking before did I say that we couldn't come back with specialty requests knowing full well that this was an absolutely essential issue. It could come back to finance, come back to this body. You stated initially that if we put a hiring freeze for 6 months on there, that it would be about $900,000. $900,000, that's in the general fund positions, right? And I think that we understand that there's got to be flexibility between staff and this board to try to make controls on that and to get approval on that. But I don't understand why it's not, we could say that the goal is $500,000. And I understand accounting, and I understand the budgets, and I understand everything that you go through. And a lack of surety is just a problem. I get that. But I think we can say we're going to cut $500,000 out of this through a hiring freeze for 6 months. I think it's possible. So I don't understand why we're so reticent to do that. So those are my comments, and I will let it go for further comments by colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments from the board on these items? Mr. Shorten.
Are we going to have the new growth plus CPI available as an amendment for Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And also, if anyone else is considering additional changes that they're going to bring to the floor on Tuesday, reach out to staff and have it done in advance.
Thank you.
Ms. Van Hoff?
Yes, thank you, first of all, for the presentation. I never got a chance to say that to you and to Donna. That was.
Could you pull your mic to your?
Okay. Sorry about that. And hearing again some of the ideas that you presented at the Finance Committee last Thursday. So I agree with Member Sager. Those two items on transportation, the consensus of the people who responded to that, the members who responded to that, were not in favor of cutting those two. Okay.
We have a record of the vote.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean we.
Do you know what it was?
We can absolutely change that.
No. Can you just remind me what it was?
We took a photo image of the whiteboard.
The bridge was 7-7. And the RTA money was 9-14. 9 to approve and 14 to.
9-4.
9 out of 14 approved.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, 9 out of 14.
Approved it. The other one was tied 7-7.
Right.
Okay, so that was one issue. And then the other thing that I was concerned about was that we did talk about a hiring freeze, but we said that we recognized that there were certain positions that were critical. And, you know, when you start talking about law enforcement, state's attorney's office, some of those positions And then some of the smaller departments that if someone retires or quits or whatever, and you go from a department of 4 to a department of 5, that could be critical. So we kind of decided that it would be good to look at that on a case-by-case basis. And so we could implement a hiring freeze, but if a department could make a case for it being a critical position to be filled, that they could present that to the board and then we could vote on it at that time. So that was my understanding of how we left that at the Finance Committee.
We can work on a scenario like that. I get it. I won't be here to deal with that, but I do get concerned a little bit too much about the legislative body being involved in the day-to-day hiring decisions. I will tell you that.
No one knows that.
In determining what is important.
Anything else, Ms. Van Hoff? Mr. Kearns?
I really hope to hear from every member here today, instead of everyone being quiet. And, because this is a big, big decision. And to me, with very large consequences. Thank you, Mr. Sager, and thank you, Carrie and Donna's presentations. We're very clear where we're headed here on either option, A or 1 or 2. I'm disturbed, and I voted against at the finance. I might not vote, but my opinion was against cutting any more out of the transportation. I mean, we bled them pretty hard, and also we made another statement that we would be cutting, or not cutting, but we would be coming back to the transportation for another $2 to $2.5 million for radios in 26, the spring possibly. That was correct, right? Did I understand that?
It could be an option.
That would be an option?
Yeah.
Okay, so if, 3 or 4 years ago, we bought radios, $2.5 million came out of our tax, our fund tax. Now we just took another $500,000 for squad cars. Now we're gonna take another $2 to $2.5 million for radios across the county. So we keep bleeding that fund. We keep bleeding it. Transportation has given a lot out of all this. We also just killed basically our matching bridge funds. And those are on the levy right now at $200,000 for each of those. For the county bridge fund and the matching fund, they're at $200,000. Those will be going away if we don't pass, but no, those are going away now.
So just to be clear, I mean,
those won't be on there because you took them.
so based on the conversation at Finance and Audit, I believe that this was the consensus of how the board wanted to move forward. But if there's agreement that you want any of them off or back on, I mean.
Well, I'm saying our levy that we're gonna vote on, the initial one, before any amendments are made, has that $200,000 for county bridge fund and $200,000 for matching fund. Well, that's no longer there in the abatement, correct? If you included those in the abatement.
So in today's numbers, those are not those are reduced to 10,000 in the abatement, the 4.3 million.
Correct. So that won't say 200,000 any longer. It'll say 10,000, just like Valley High. Okay, so we have to amend that on Tuesday for sure.
We will likely, the thought process in bringing today was that what we would post when we post the agenda tomorrow would be the option 2 with the look back and the abatement. And that's the conversations that we've had so far. And then if that doesn't pass, then we will have the other budget here and available.
Okay, and I'm not, I'm not saying whether I agree or not with taking, I don't agree with taking those. And how that affects everyone's votes, neither here nor there. I will say, one thing that we have to look at between our option 1 and our option 2, when we make our votes next Tuesday, is where are we gonna be at next year, okay? Where are we gonna be next year? We better start thinking about the cuts we can make next year, because some of us are saying, I'll vote for the look back next year, and that. Well, you're putting that on another year out, you don't know what's gonna happen. And that opportunity may not arise. So live with our votes that we make on Tuesday, and I'm fine with that. Let's live with our vote. But also, you better start thinking about, and I agree with Mr. Kunkel, if you're gonna take the option that does not have the look back, if that's the option you choose, or you may not even have the votes to take that option, the CPI, you may not have the votes for that. Where do we go? And it's gonna be some pretty aggressive cuts to everything, services, for the fiscal year 27 budget. My opinion. We've got aggressive cuts. So, I mean, at 27, option 1, we're 513,000 in the hole at the end of the year, unbalanced at the end of the year. If you take the look back, you're 887. Does that 887 include the increased abatement? It doesn't include that, right?
So that's the end of fiscal 27?
27.
So that would be a decision, I mean, obviously the 887 is positive, that could be an amount that's abated in 27.
Right, but I'm saying that number today is not correct because you increased the abatement this year by taking 900,000 out of transportation.
So
So that number is actually greater by 900,000?
No,
in
so those
27?
numbers I presented today, I recalculated for the yellow options we talked about it.
They are, okay.
Correct, yes.
That was one of the questions. Thank you. And I asked my questions poorly, I'm sorry. But that was the point I was trying to make. Okay. So we have the chance to be in the positive. We have the chance to save our bond ratings. I was hoping Donna Kurtz could still be here, but I know she had this other meeting. So I'm really concerned about that future, those graphs and charts that Donna Kurtz had out there, the treasurer, for where we will be on trending, that we ruin our bond rating. And that bond rating is going to come and haunt us in the future. The other thing I'm concerned about is there's $5 million in that, I saw in those charts today, $5 million that the sheriff's department is capturing from Lake County inmates. Is that correct number, that 5 million?
It's over 2 years.
Over 2 years. Okay, so it's 2.5 million a year. Okay.
Sandra,
That's the
did you
net.
want to
The net.
speak to that, or?
It's a conservative net.
Okay.
For that, but we do need all of our employees to continue that contract. So we have 7 retiring in the first quarter of the year, so.
And certainly a hiring freeze is gonna have to be lifted for that.
We would be back before you, yes.
Okay, and that's part of my questioning here. The next question I have, though, is that contract can be canceled at any time. I'm not saying a what if, I'm saying when that happens at some point, that contract ends, the cost is to this county $2.5 million that we're gonna have to find again. So I'm just trying to make these points a little bit here of, well, you still got a lot of cost and what those funds are being used for. We didn't increase the cost very much when we took those inmates in, correct?
We've not increased labor costs.
Correct.
We do have higher healthcare costs and food service costs and utilities costs.
But it's not to the tune of $2.5 million.
Right.
It is not.
And so I only want to bring up these points. You know, people say, well, what if? Well, that's a big what if. At some point, Lake County's going to say, hey, we don't have the money to be paying these guys. Let's just let them go. Or they'll do something. They'll make room for them over there. At some point, they're going to do it because their budget's going to be just like the rest of us with these unfunded mandates. So I really want to hear the rest of you who don't favor one or the other. Some of you may not favor either. And I'm not looking for a vote today, but I'm looking for what are our options come Tuesday night to change some of these levy amounts. You know, we've got 9 million in the highway fund, and we've been ticking them all along. The 1 million veterans fund, we can't touch that, correct? That's there, right?
That's based on their proposed budget.
Right. But, you know, Valley High, you can't kick that again. You've already kicked that around.
And just remember, if we do talk about a hiring freeze, and we absolutely can do some scenario building around a hiring freeze, but a hiring freeze ought not to consider Valley High. That doesn't get us anything.
Right.
Right? If Joe Kropalski loses a snowplow driver, I think he ought to be able to fill that position during the middle of the winter because it doesn't impact the general fund.
So,
Yeah.
General fund
just answered the
positions is what
question.
you're saying.
We're talking about general fund positions, non-law enforcement, non-attorneys. It starts to get a lot smaller.
Right. And so that might not be such a good thing. But I just have to say, with everything brought up here today, I don't see, I'm really disturbed we took more out of transportation. Really disturbed with that. I don't know where I'm going with that. But it's always been the kick in the shorts on the transportation. I will say this, in January's Committee of Transportation, we have placed it on the agenda to discuss and possibly take action to eliminate the township bridge support that we have been giving. And because of this budget, it's unsustainable. We are unsustainable, and I agree, either way, it's unsustainable. The only sustain is the look back. The rest is unsustainable. You can say down the road, next year, and I was one of those, have never voted for this, and I've always taken that hit. But I believe and I've always preached sustainability, we're way past the point of sustainability here, and the treasurer's charting does really show that. So we still have to make cuts. We still have to turn over every rock that we can. I agree with Mr. Kunkel on that we have to turn over we need to discuss different ways that we possibly do some contracts, but we need to educate our board and committees on some of these engineering costs and different things, because people have said to me, well, your engineering costs so much more than if we did it ourselves or different things. And I'll ask that our committees get explanations for the future, how we could, if we can affect those engineering costs, or outfitting the trucks cheaper, possibly in transportation by doing it ourselves or different things. Because those have been brought to my attention, and I thought, well, yeah, let's figure out why we can or can't do those. Because we have to do this cost savings, no matter what we do here, guys. We've got to do some of these cost savings throughout the county. Throughout all the departments, we've got to do this. And that's including taking the look back. We still have to continue that. We can't just take it and say, well, it's all done, our work is done. Our work is actually just beginning here. We've been working at this for a long time, years. And I know, I guess I'm showing a little bit of my frustrations that people aren't speaking up of why. I mean, it's easy to sit here and not say anything and not put yourself out there. I'm asking you all to put yourself out there a little bit and say, why are you thinking these things? And I know it's always the same ones that are putting themselves out there, but some of us have sat here and not said a word. Maybe you don't have anything to say, I don't know, but I really would push for people to speak here.
Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Chair. Address a couple things I think here. First, in regard to the freeze, I know we kind of talked about it, but I completely agree with Mr. Austin here, and I don't agree with Ms. Van Hoff or Mr. Seiger. You're already talking about eliminating the sheriff from this or the lawyers and things like that. We have 880 FTEs in the general fund, and so that's probably like 500 of them gone right there. So now you're down to 300 left, and there's nowhere to do that at. All those departments that are left over have either single-digit employees or very low double-digit employees. And so, that's just not there. The 500,000, I mean, that'd be 6 employees, 7 employees, and they're just not there in that. So that number doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it belongs on there. And we don't need to be micromanaging that. I think staff does an excellent job in trying to look for those savings. It's been brought up about savings, and I agree that we should continuously look at things. I've used this analogy with people I've talked to on the phone, and I've said it to some people here, so I apologize for repeating it. This county board and the staff has spent the last 10 years finding half dollars and quarters in the jar and nickels and dimes, and we're down to pennies now. We're literally down to pennies. They take up a lot of room, but they don't add up to a lot, okay? Yeah, yeah, I just saw that today. They've been eliminated also. So, if we don't do the look back, we're looking at a $4.5 million deficit in 2027. Did I have that right? $4.5 million. I don't know where you're gonna find it. I mean, I've looked and looked and looked, and it's not there until you start actually cutting programs. Jim thinks we're taking a lot from transportation now. A lot more will come out of transportation. A lot will have to come out of, some of our elected officials' funds to find that $4.5 million. One of the other big departments is public health, okay? But I was looking, public health has 52 programs they do. 39 of those are mandated. The other ones they consider essential. And they went through that when they did their budgets. And most of those essential services, all of them are paid by user fees or grants. So they're not even coming out of the general fund. They're funding themselves. So when you start trying to look for $4.5 million and then $5 million the following year and $6.5 million or $7 million the following year, that money's just, it's not there. And I think staff does an admirable job trying to find every nickel, dime, and penny they can find. We're down to auditing software licenses. We're looking under every single rock. And we have resources, we have to allocate them, and we just have to spend more time looking at those dollars and how we allocate them. But I agree with Jim. If the look back doesn't happen, come next year, this decision will have looked easy compared to what we'll be looking at next year. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Gottemoller.
Yes, so one of the reasons we get in this situation is because we have a PTEL statute that is designed to say you can't have more than the cost of living or 5%, whichever is lower. What the look back does is a work around that PTEL law. That's one of the problems that I have with it, and it's one of the problems that the people in this county that passed the sales tax, to pull things out of here and move it into sales tax. And yes, we have a 3-year look back because we're pretending that pull out and sales tax didn't happen. And so we're going to use the old number and then abate a bunch. That's the basic problem I have. We're stuck with everybody else in the whole state of Illinois when it comes to this. You get CPI and new growth, and that's where I'm at.
Dr. Sager.
I guess I would appreciate, Chair, if there were some way, and this is totally your prerogative or your ability to reject, but I would like to say, if we go with option one, and we have to look at these additional areas to potentially cut, I would like to know if there is a majority of people that say, in fact, yes, we're gonna have to pull from those two top items, which were transportation. Specifically, one was on the use of the RTA funds for squad cars, and the second one then was a question of whether or not we should go ahead and reduce the bridge share program or eliminate the bridge share program. I'd like to know if you can call a straw poll on that. It's up to you, but I think that would provide me with some clarification.
I think we could come up with 100 different scenarios here today if we want to go down the line. I'm not saying that there's not value in it, but you know, a ton of work has been done by committee and staff to get at this point, looking at additional places where we can cut, whether it's staff or costs or shifting levies one way or another. Get us from 1.7 million to nearly 4.3 million in an abatement with use of general fund dollars. I think that, you know, the work that's been done, and even with consensus out of the committees, you know, deserves a vote up or down. At the end of the day, there's certainly room in the right of a member to make an amendment the night of the voting meeting, whatever you may choose to do. But I think that it really does deserve an up or down vote on whether we should do this or not, especially based on some of the information that our own treasurer has provided us. So, I mean, what my intent is to post the look back with the 4.2 plus abatement. And, you know, it's certainly up to the board on what they want to do during that meeting. Mr. Scala.
I don't want this to come off wrong, but when the question was asked, will you also have, if option 2 is not successful, you have option 1 ready to be able to be used, correct? So my question is, in option 1, where are you coming up with $1.87 million?
So based on all of the discussion and the feedback I've gotten from the board.
Could you speak up just a little bit? I have a hard time hearing you.
It will be coming from fund balance unless there's other decisions made for cuts.
So I just want to be very clear. You're using 1.87 million for fund balance. Again, so I'm just going to lay this out there. We're using fund balance for reoccurring expenses that are going to happen the next year and the next year and the next year. That's bullshit. Plain and simple, that's bullshit. If that's what this board wants to do, God bless them, but the board has said we're not doing that. So I think in difference to what y'all are doing, the board better take a hard look at the fact that that's what they want to do. Because they don't want to do option 2, that's fine. A majority of the board rules and that's the decision. I'm fine, I'm comfortable with that. But to then go down the second rabbit hole of using fund balance for reoccurring expenses for year over year, that's a door that is very hazardous. And I God bless the board that wants to do that.
Ms. Greeno.
If you go to option 1, does that include the cut or the taking the money from the transportation fund? That would be in there?
Yes.
Okay. And then just to clarify, because I have really looked into King County. King County doesn't know where King County is right now, but it's not good. There's 102 counties. did I hear in previous meetings that we're the only county that doesn't touch the transportation fund, or one of a handful?
There's only 6 counties, 5 collar counties that have RTA sales tax.
Okay,
right?
okay.
And
Thank
Lake
you.
also does not use it any longer for anything other than transportation.
Okay, of the 6?
So it's 5 collar counties.
5 collar,
right?
okay.
Cook's a different beast, so it's 5 collars, and of the 5, Lake and McHenry are only 2 right now that have been using it exclusively for transportation.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Ms. Campbell?
I guess that I wanted just to, I know we've had a lot of discussion, address the idea that PTEL limits us to a certain amount every year, and that this year it would be 2.9 plus growth. The problem the reason we're in the problem that we are is for too long, we've made the decision that we're either going to keep it flat or we're going to reduce. So if the idea or the mindset is we're only going to take what's available through PTEL now going forward, then everybody should, the reserves are the least of our problems. We're going to have to start deciding which programs essential that we're not going to fund at all, and it has to be started now, because I don't know how you maintain this. I understand the look back has been very complicated because of the fact of the mental health board, but we keep going back to the fact that because the job was done for so long to keep everything flat and make sure we were being as efficient as possible. I mean, the fact that we could absorb that inflationary costs over those years is a testament to staff's commitment to keeping expenses down, reducing staffing levels, and so on. We've talked about, depending on what you're looking at, if you look at the yellow bar graph, and that just year over year, it was $64 million that was left on the table. If you had started, well, I forget the year it was, 2019, and then had that as your base and looked at what you could have taken, it's at more like $128 million. With all the abatements, we're talking about 1.9 million of the look back that would be needed to just get us into a really good position going forward. So I don't know how you continue the argument that we can't take anything at all unless going forward, because we can see where we're headed. We knew this was coming. We knew we were going to be here. We knew this years ago. So I guess that argument that we're limited by just what we have right now, I know that that's, I don't know. I don't know what to say, because we know where we're going.
Mr. Scala.
I'm sorry, I forgot. I wanted to address Jim's comment about the AAA bond rating. It's not that a bond rating agency couldn't come back and reclassify us from a AAA to something lower. But typically speaking, the only time bond agencies will rate you is when you're issuing debt, because that's what the people that are looking to buy it look at, and that's what the interest rates that they charge based on your debt that you're issuing. So unless the county is for whatever reason wanting to issue debt for something, they typically would not go back and re-look at what our rating is. It would just stay what it is until a point in time where we would issue more debt for whatever purpose. So, and they can. I mean, you know, a bond rating agency can come back and say, well, even though the county doesn't have any debt and they're not issuing any debt, based on their trajectory, we're going to downgrade them to something. But I don't want to say that never happens, because it does, but it's pretty rare for that to happen. It's typically only when you issue bonds that they would go back and rate you. So, I mean, it's a nice thing for us to say. It's a good PR side. You know, Alicia probably loves the fact that we could, you know, publicize that. But, you know, the reality is it doesn't mean a hell of a lot unless you're issuing bonds. So.
My understanding is that it depends on the type of debt that you're looking for as well. I mean, whether it's to fund a capital program, whether it's a road or a building, it's not as much of an issue. It's when you're funding day-to-day operations with debt that can really put a hit on your credit rating, which in turn will raise your cost of money borrowed. So, any other comments from the board? I don't see any, like one, Ms. Greeno?
God, I'm so sorry. But I didn't want to be subtle. When I was asking Treasurer Kurtz what would have happened if we had not transferred the levy to sales tax, because then we would not even have the option of having this look back. Well, the answer was we would have made cuts. And so that was, my point in asking that. And so I don't want to be subtle. So we are still in that same situation, and to us to even look at option 1 or option 2 as the solution, you guys, we have to figure out how to do things more efficiently, maybe work to change some things administratively at the state level so that we don't have these unfunded mandates and we don't lose our locus of control, because we're in such a strong financial situation. I mean, our worst case here is that we're going to have to liquidate some of our investments to cover our cash flow, which of course we don't want to do, but sometimes things get tough and you have to pull in your belt buckle and muscle through. And it does make you stronger and it does make you better. I really appreciate Member Gadamaller's comments on the fact of why PTEL was put in place and how this workaround is and how it is taken by our constituents.
Mr. Shorten?
So I appreciate Member Gadamaller's comments. PTEL was put in place to keep taxing bodies from increasing more than the taxpayers would prefer. I think the taxpayers would probably prefer we just cut everything until the next year and there's nothing to cut. The other part of the equation, the challenges that we face, a lot of them come from Springfield on the expense side. So while I appreciate the PTEL, we're still dealing with the ramifications of the Safety Act and all the other acts that I could probably list if I had it written down. I don't have them in my brain. This process has not been easy, should not be easy, and should never be easy. So, the thing that I'm gonna have to lay over the next couple of days and have more sleepless nights is the direction that we wanna go. And I appreciate the fact certainly that if we go with option 1, which is CPI and new growth, we're gonna have to make cuts. The challenge is with asking what cuts we're gonna make, especially to the folks that have been very, very verbal about the need for a flat, or not taking the look back, or not taking CPI. And I haven't really heard them as what cuts do you suggest? Because I can certainly, I've already taken a look at this thing on a line by line basis. And if we're gonna get to the point that we're just doing CPI and new growth, we are gonna have to cut. And those cuts are going to have to be across the board. I agree with Mr. Kearns. And that means we're gonna have to talk to the sheriff about cutting law enforcement. And we're gonna have to make cuts to our entire system of justice. And I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. So again, to the folks that are hardline, no new taxes, we need to cut, in earnest, what are you comfortable with cutting? That's what I want to hear. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna lose a quorum here, so we can certainly have more conversation on Tuesday. Pete, you got a report for us?
Super quick, there was 2 bridge projects, Pickasaw Ridge and Graff Road. When we posted We changed the source to RTA.
Can you
It was misrepresented.
pull your mic, Mike?
So when we post tomorrow, we're going to change it to RTA. It was misrepresented in there as a different road source. So it was a typo. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Scala makes the motion. Ms. Greeno seconds. All in favor, say aye. Against? Have a good day.